Okay. I will start, as I told you. First of all, thank you very much for being with us today. I will greet the people in Greek in the beginning, and then I will carry on in English. Okay. Κυρίες και κύριοι, αγαπητοί φίλοι, συνεργάτες, φοιτήτριες, φοιτητές και γονείς. Το όνομά μου είναι Βασίλης Αργυρόπουλος και δουλεύω ως αναπληρωτής καθηγητής στο Παιδαγωγικό Τμήμα Ειδικής Αγωγής στο Πανεπιστήμιο Θεσσαλίας, και η σημερινή εκδήλωση αφορά στο κλείσιμο ουσιαστικά ενός μεγάλου ευρωπαϊκού προγράμματος που φέρει το ακρονίμιο PRECIVIM. Το PRECIVIM σημαίνει Promoting Effective Communication for People with Visual Impairment and Additional Disabilities. Δηλαδή, η ερμηνεία αυτού του πράγματος σημαίνει ότι με ποιους τρόπους μπορούμε να ενισχύσουμε τις επικοινωνιακές δεξιότητες ή γενικότερα την επικοινωνία σε αυτόν τον πληθυσμό. Τον πληθυσμό δηλαδή των ατόμων με αναπηρία όρασης και επιπρόσθετες άλλες αναπηρίες. Πρόκειται λοιπόν για ένα πρόγραμμα ευρωπαϊκό που διήρκησε 3 χρόνια και επειδή πέσαμε πάνω στην περίπτωση του κορονοϊού, παρατάθηκε και πάει στους 40 μήνες και θα λήξει το Δεκέμβρη. Σε αυτό το πρόγραμμα, πέρα από εμάς, το Πανεπιστήμιο Θεσσαλίας, που είμαστε και συντονιστές, συμμετέχουν και πολλές χώρες με πολλούς εταίρους. Είναι λοιπόν από τη Ρουμανία το Babes Bolyai University και το ειδικό σχολείο δευτεροβάθμιας εκπαίδευσης για τυφλά άτομα από τη Ρουμανία. Έχουμε το Roehampton University και το σχολικό συγκρότημα Whitefield Academy Trust από την Αγγλία. Έχουμε τη Σχολή Τυφλών Άγιος Βαρνάβας της Κύπρου και από τη χώρα μας έχουμε το Ειδικό Δημοτικό Σχολείο Τυφλοκοφών και τον Πανελλήνιο Σύλλογο Γονέων Κηδεμόνων και Φίλων Ατόμων με Προβλήματα Όρασης και Επιπρόσθετες Αναπηρίες στην Αμιμόνη, καθώς και την εταιρεία πληροφορικής Data Bank. Θα πρέπει να πούμε ότι σε αυτό το σύνολο των εταίρων συμμετέχει και η EBU, η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση Τυφλών, και λειτουργεί ως αρρωγός σε αυτή μας την προσπάθεια. Τώρα, αυτό λοιπόν είναι το πρόγραμμα. Αυτή είναι για μας το Πανεπιστήμιο Θεσσαλίας είναι η πολλαπλασιαστική δράση και έχουμε προσκεκλημένους ομιλητές, όπως έχετε ήδη διαπιστώσει, που μιλούν ξένα, μιλούν αγγλικά, γι' αυτό και θα γίνει, και έχουμε πάρα πολλούς επίσης ακροατές που είναι από το εξωτερικό, γι' αυτό και θα τα πούμε στα αγγλικά σήμερα. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για το ενδιαφέρον σας στην απόψινή εκδήλωση. Ό,τι απορίες υπάρχουν θα έχουμε πολύ ενδιαφέρον να τις ακούσουμε και φυσικά ευχόμαστε και ελπίζουμε να ανταποκριθούμε στις προσδοκίες σας. Τώρα θα ξεκινήσουμε να μιλάμε στα αγγλικά μέχρι το τέλος. Εντάξει. Dear friends, dear colleagues, partners and dear parents, of course. This is the online conference which actually constitutes the final stages of the PrECIVIM project. PrECIVIM is the acronym of this project, and it stands for Promoting Effective Communication for Individuals with Vision Impairment and Multiple Disabilities. It is an Erasmus Plus project, and University of Thessaly is the coordinating organization for this project. It is a 3-year project, but because of the ups and downs of the coronavirus, it is extended up to 40 months. So, in fact, it ends by the end of December 2020. In this project, we did many things, and all the actions, all the tasks, all the activities were at the theme of the section of communication. It is a great pleasure, it is a great honor that we have you here, and it was really a big event for us and a big challenging. So thank you so much for being here with us, and I suppose and I hope that all the attendees will be fascinated from the talks and the presentations. So we start this evening with Professor John Ravenscroft. John is, hello John. John is Professor of Childhood Visual Impairment at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and he is very much interested in the nature of representation as well as in the process of cognition. The title of John's presentation is Theory of Mind and Cerebral Visual Impairment. So John, you are most welcome. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Vasilis, and hello everyone. I shall try and speak slowly and clearly, but when I get excited, I speak very, very fast, so I must try and remember to slow down. So currently I'm sitting in my study here in Scotland, 3 degrees, having watched the snow fall down earlier. So I just need some of your lovely Greek sunshine, I think, is what I need. All right, good. I'm going to just start to share my talk now, and with a little bit of luck, you can see all this. Vasilis, can you see this?
Yep.
All right, that's good. Good. I'm just moving my screens around so I can do it. And there we go. Okay, good. Yeah. So here we go. We've got around 45 minutes. So theory of mind and cerebral visual impairment. And once again, I just want to thank you for inviting me for this. It's a real honor, and thank you, Vasilis.
Yeah.
So while I'm thanking people, a lot of people have helped me think about this talk together. It's a talk that I've been thinking about for a while. I'm thinking about all the research that is around theory of mind and around theory of mind and vision impairment and around theory of mind of children with multiple disabilities. And I've tried to bring some of it together to think about theory of mind and children with cerebral visual impairment. And all of these people on the screen here, Amanda, Gordon, Karen, Martin, Leah, Helen and Simon, have all helped me think about this talk. So what is this talk really about? Well, that's a really good question. It certainly is my ideas, my ramblings, my thinking about theory of mind and thinking about the nature of representation. I look at what theory of mind is, what the research it is, and connect it to children and adults with CVI. And I think this is important. So in this talk, I could be completely wrong, right? I could be talking rubbish, completely nonsense. I could be partially wrong. I might be a little bit right. I could be entirely right. But the important is no one knows for sure, right? No one knows for sure, especially me. And this is quite an alarming part as an academic and as a researcher. We really do not know anything about the theory of mind and children with CVI. So this is, like I say, a combination of research put together. I've not yet, I'm in the middle of doing research with children with CVI and theory of mind. So this is just the conceptualized thinking about this talk. Like I say, I could be wrong, which is fine, but I could be right, which is even better, I guess. All right, good. So the nature of representations. This is, as Vasilia said at the very beginning, is really, really important to me. I think anyone who works with children with visual impairment, whether it's ocular impairment or whether it's cerebral visual impairment, and children with multiple disabilities, has to think about the nature of representation. We have to think about what is that child seeing? What is that child seeing in the world? How do they represent the world inside their head? Right? And this is a really, really fundamental problem. And it's a fundamental problem that has really concerned philosophers. Part of my training way back in the early 80s, late 70s, is I have a philosophy degree. And I've been really thinking about this since really quite late on, early 80s. And I guess my favorite paper here is by a philosopher called Thomas Nagel. And he's got a paper called What's It Like to Be a Bat? And in this paper, he says, well, you can only know what's it like to be a bat if an organism has conscious mental states, if and only it's something like to be that organism. So in order to know if a child, what a child with CVI and multiple disabilities represents, you have to be like that child with CVI and multiple disabilities. Is that right? Is Thomas Nagel right? So from this paper, I've really just been thinking about, is there any way we can think about what is it that a child with CVI and multiple disabilities, what is it that they represent? And this issue about what the child represent, what the child sees in its mind about the world that's out there, is what's called the mind-body problem. And it's just not a local problem. It's got to do with the mind, behavior, its organism. And it really is this fundamental question. The mind-body problem is a fundamental question. And it's not a new question. It's not something that we've just thought about just because of children with CVI. The very famous example of this, of course, is the Molyneux question that was given to John Locke. And this is a very famous standardized question that we bring out and show our students. And it's quite interesting because I think it does represent how we think about visual impairment as a whole. So this was written by William Molyneux to John Locke in 1688. So this is a really old question and it's still relevant today. So a man, so this is what Molyneux wrote to John Locke. Man being born blind and having a globe and a cube of the same bigness committed to his hand, and he was being taught or told which is called the globe and which is the cube, so as easily to distinguish them by touch or feeling. And then we take the cube and the globe from him and put it on a table, and then by magic we restore this person's sight. And the question that Molyneux asked is whether he could, by his sight, or before he touched them, know which is the globe and which is the cube. So if someone is blind and they understand that this is a globe and understand this is a cube by touch and only by touch, and then we suddenly restore the sight, will they know which is the globe and which is the cube without touching them? I'm going to answer that question at the end, so I want you to think about this as you go through the talk. Will that person know which is the cube and which is the globe by their sight? And this is what we mean about that nature of representation. So moving on to CVI, if I look at CVI and I look at the world around CVI and I think about CVI, we see all of these words: parietal, left, right, visual, side, language, frequently reduced body, posterior tendencies, severe difficulties, lobes, vision, all of these things. And then if I move to the world of theory of mind, I see slightly different, but again, similar things: representation, brain, cognitive, thought, people. So I started to think about then, well, I wonder what is that connection between theory of mind and CVI? And so the key question I'm going to ask in this talk, I think, really is about perception. How is perception for us and others tied to cognition for children who have CVI? And by CVI, I really mean just brain-based vision impairment. I'm not at all interested, particularly for this talk, whether we talk about cortical or cerebral, or if there's a difference or not. I'm not interested in that at all. What I mean by CVI is brain-based vision impairment, something that is not ocular impairment. So just anything that is brain-based vision impairment. And so can theory of mind tell us anything about CVI is a fundamental question. And can CVI tell us anything about theory of mind? And I wonder then if it can, or if it can't, I wonder if mirror neurons are important to this story. And I'll go through what mirror neurons are soon. So, if you're like me and like Vasilis, who are very old and who are young, who did their psychology degree years and years ago, I'll do a quick recap on the theory of mind. So the theory of mind then was a term introduced roughly around 1978 by Premack and Woodruff. And theory of mind is what we say about the ability to attribute mental states, okay, to beliefs, the desires of others. So I'm already looking at Vasilis and I can attribute that he's falling asleep. I can attribute that my theory of mind to Vasilis is that he's wishing he had a whiskey, and I think he's going, when will John shut up so I can go and have a... So this is my theory of mind looking at Vasilis there. So I'm using my theory of mind. Premack and Woodruff explained it as an innate cognitive module that develops in childhood in typically developing children. And it's known as a theory because the system states and inferences, we can't observe it. We can't see a theory of mind in fMRI scanners. We can't actually pinpoint it. So theory of mind helps us to relate to others. It helps us to be help to empathize with others, predict behavior, understand our emotions, our intentions, correct others' misunderstandings. And quite interestingly, theory of mind helps us to mislead people. It helps us to be deceptive. It helps us to exclude others. And it helps us to manipulate people because I can read, I can interpret other people's behavior. And all of these things are important to children who have cerebral visual impairment. And that really is quite key here. The perceptions of other states and minds and knowing what other people is a key social skill. We need that key skill. All children, adults, all need this skill of being able to understand and be able to predict other people's behavior, being able to know when Vasilis wants a new glass of whiskey. These are the things that I need to concentrate in my theory of mind. It's effective and it's necessary for social functioning. Otherwise, we could have this mind blindness. Otherwise, we'd have no idea on how to predict others' behaviors, and we wouldn't understand how we could function within this world. It's a relatively new concept, like I say, from 1978. And it really is a bridge, I think. It's a term that we use as psychologists between child development, education, and psychology there. So social cognition is key, right? And this is what theory of mind is. It's really about social cognition. It's about the ability to interact well, to interact socially, and to understand and reason about other people in terms of how people think and feel. And for me, the best way of describing social cognition is about meta-representation. It is about understanding the knowledge and mental states of others. So if we've got this ability, if we've got this innate module, if we've got this in typical developing children and adults, we've got this ability to read and interpret others' behaviors. But what about children with CVI? And how will they affect their social cognition? Well, children with CVI, we know, have difficulty in perceiving the direction of sounds. So if you don't know where that sound is coming from, if you don't understand who is speaking, what that voice is and where that's coming from, that's going to affect your social cognition. We know that children have difficulty in seeing moving objects, and that includes people, that includes your mouth when you're talking, that includes your eyes, and if you notice for me, my hands, I'm always moving my hands when I talk. It's really hard not to for me. We know that children with CVI have difficulty in understanding the composition of crowded environments. So it's really difficult for children with CVI to identify friends, parents, family in crowded environments. We know that if the child's got visual neglect, can't really take in that full environment. We know that the pursuit difficulties may be very difficult. We know that some children with CVI focus and have apraxia of gaze, find it very difficult to switch to a new focus, so just only focusing on one area and small thing. We know that some children have difficulties in either holistic or focal processing. There may be face blindness, and there may be an inability to interpret the language conveyed by facial expressions. So children with CVI have it difficult to understand that facial expression. And it's very difficult for children with CVI to understand their own orientation in space, in that 3D world that we live in. So all of these factors, to me, seem to suggest, well, I wonder if children with CVI have difficulty in developing a theory of mind. Clearly, all of these factors affect their social cognition. So it seems to me that there might well be a correlation between CVI and a deficit in theory of mind. But let's have a look. In order to argue that, I need to understand what theory of mind is in typically developing children. And so theory of mind in typically developing children sort of really begins around the 3 years of age, right? It tends to be firmly in place around 4 or 5 years of age. And so most children, when they start school, particularly in Scotland in primary 1, will have a theory of mind ability, okay? There's kind of bell curves to this. Some will start later, some will start earlier, but it's around 4 or 5. You will have a very good theory of mind in typically developing children. But we know in typically developing children, there are some influences and there are some factors. So for example, Pears and Fishers noticed that children in foster care, looked after children, have real deficit, a delay in developing a theory of mind. And even if you take into age, intelligence, all of those factors, it seems to be that children in foster care have less able to pass theory of mind tasks. And it seems to be that social deprivation, i.e., where you live, if you have money, if you can have food, you can feed yourself, seems to have an effect on theory of mind development. And my work in itself, looking at social deprivation and CVI, there's a very strong correlation between social deprivation and CVI, again seems to suggest that children with CVI might have a deficit in theory of mind. Is it cultural? Do children in Greece, do children in Turkey, do children in Scotland, do children in America, do children in China, do children in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, wherever they are in the world, are there cultural differences in theory of mind? Well, the research seems to say no. It seems to suggest that theory of mind is universal. It's a human trait and it's universal. Not necessarily only human, by the way, but it is universal. So there does tend to be very little evidence to suggest that it's a cultural factor. So children in Scotland have the same theory of mind development as children in China. And there's lots and lots of research about this. Also, there seems to be research about if you've got siblings. So if you've got twins and a brother or sister, you're more likely to develop a good theory of mind earlier, particularly if you're the older child as well. There's lots of research about this. What also is important in developing a theory of mind for typically developing children is the mother's tongue, is a mother's narrative. So if the mother talks to you a lot and describes things and environment things as the child is developing, you're more likely to develop a theory of mind. And so that role of language is really, really important in developing this theory of mind. So again, if we think back to children with CVI, think about children with multiple disabilities and vision impairment as a whole, that role of language, that speed of input, that speed of processing has to be really slow, you know, has to be delayed and slow. And you think, oh, that's got to affect that theory of mind development. Again, of course, we can't ignore the child's own personal developments. What's also really, really important in developing a theory of mind is attention. And age-old question, what comes first, attention or perception, perception or attention? So again, I'll tell you the answer to that first. But attention, it's really important. We've got to have sustained attention to focus on one specific task without being distracted. So that's important for theory of mind. We're able to select attention as well. We're able to select from all the things that are happening back and forth, different stimuli, to focus only on the one that you want. There's alternating attention. We're able to switch between back and forth of different things, and we're able to divide our attention. So all of these attention things are important for perception and important for the development of theory of mind. But attention is a central process, right? And attention is absolutely precedes perception. You don't have perception before attention. You need to attend before you perceive. So it's not possible to have perception without attention. So, and we know that children with CVI have difficulty with attention. If they have difficulty with attention, by necessity, they are going to have difficulty with perception. Okay? Attentional processes serve various functions in the organization of our perceptions and other cognitive functions. If you can't attend, you're going to have significant implications for the development of theory of mind. So other factors. So again, there's obviously some cognitive abilities in how early we achieve a theory of mind. Well, it's the memory, attention, as I already described, inhibition, how quickly we can achieve it, the role of the executive functional lobe on how we attune and how we have attention. All of these are really important. You know, the executive function is related to the theory of mind, which is related to social behavior. So executive function is important for attention, and it's important for theory of mind. So I've talked about what theory of mind is. How do we assess it? Well, there's loads and lots and lots and lots and lots of tests. There's the false belief test, the value belief test, the desire emotion test, the not own desire emotion tasks, the ignorance test. There's lots and lots and lots of lines. If you're interested in, you can look at the link there. But basically, it's a kind of unexpected transfer test. And so the most famous of these is the Sally-Ann test. And this is really the classic example of any theory of mind test. There are more sophisticated examples, but this is the Sally-Ann test. So you see Sally. So there is Sally, and this is Anne. Hello, Sally. Hello, Anne. So Sally's got the ball, and she puts the ball into the basket. Okay. Sally then goes out for a walk, and then Anne takes the ball out of the basket and puts it into a box. Now, the typical question is, now Sally comes back, she wants to play with the ball. Where will Sally look for the ball? So if you have a theory of mind, a fully functioning theory of mind, you will say, the basket, she'll look in the basket, because that's where she last put it. But if you don't have a fully functioning theory of mind, you go the box, the box, the box. And there are many, many variants of this, but this is your typical theory of mind task. And it's developed by Baron Cohen, Leslie and Frith, lots and lots of them. And it was really there to really start to understand the social cognition of children with autism, and particularly Down syndrome as well, comparing to healthy children control. And what we find in the literature, and lots and lots and lots of literature about this, is that 85% of typically children around the age of 4 and 5 pass the theory of mind task, right? They all say, she would look in the basket, she would look in the basket. And interestingly, 86% of all children with Down syndrome pass the test as well. And again, looking at more recent literature, 80% of children with ocular visual impairment passed the theory of mind test, but only 20% of children with autism passed. Now, what we don't know, and there's no evidence, no one's done any work on this, I think I'm the only one who's doing some work on this, is that we don't know about theory of mind and children with CVI. Okay, we just don't know. There is no evidence for this. Nothing's been published yet. But we know that many children with CVI and multiple disabilities have low acuity, have contrast sensitivity, have visual field deficits, have simultaneous agnosia, prosopagnosia, integrative agnosia, and all of these preclude access to that visual field, to that visual element. And so it's really quite difficult, though, through this type of testing to actually which is why no one's done it, I think, to try and really understand if, in fact, children with CVI and multiple disabilities have a theory of mind deficit. But there are all sorts of issues with the task, and there's lots of research about Gopnik and Assington think about, well, maybe the Sally Ann task is the wrong way to do it. And I think maybe they're right. We need to think about metacognition first, whether the child has metacognition. But this is quite difficult to think about. And how do we assess metacognition in children with multiple disabilities and vision impairment? So we need to think about that. And that Alison Gopnik, in her papers here, suggested should be a lot easier. So metacognition enables us to, if you don't have it, it could be harder to read and give social signals. The personal style might be less empathetic. Play will be less likely to include pretend play. Yeah, we see that in some children with CVI. Play may be dependent on understanding the mental states, and learning may be problematic at school, partly because children with CVI and multiple disabilities trying to get the interpretation of language because difficulties in adjusting that behavior. So let's just look at theory of mind and ocular visual impairment first. Okay, I'm just interested in that, not brain-based VI, just ocular visual impairment first. Let's look at this. So in the past, there's been lots and lots of research by Minter, Songson and Dale, Cormack, Green, Bramberg, Ashbrook, have all said that vision is key, is really key and plays a critical role in developing a theory of mind. All of these saying that individuals had little experience in social integrations, they couldn't learn about others' mental states, they couldn't see the social interactions, and people with ocular VI couldn't judge the gap between experience and verbal interaction and so forth. And therefore, the argument used to be the case that children with ocular visual impairment were delayed in acquiring a theory of mind because they couldn't see those social interactions. However, that's really sort of being thrown out of the water now, okay? There are lots and lots of studies, and I've only picked 3 here who's saying, well, that's not quite right, okay? And so Berger, Pinjaka, Sack, Wernicke, and others have all shown that there are no differences whatsoever with VI, children with visual, these are young adults with visual impairment and typically sighted young adults in their higher order theory of mind use. They're showing that they are actually maybe representing theory of mind in a different way to sighted children. And that different way is quite interesting, but actually there is no children and young adults who have no vision have a theory of mind. And the combined, and one way might be this, is that what seems to be happening in children and young adults and adults who have no vision at all, who are blind, is that actually what happens in the brain is that we still have that visual cortical functional architecture seems to be working anyway, okay? And we know that when we do MRI and fMRI scans in people who have no vision and people who are blind, the actual visual pathways in the brain still actually fire, still actually work, right? So they still develop a theory of mind based on that vision argument, if you want, because the visual firings are still work. And this is known as supramodality. And there's lots and lots of evidence in showing this, that if you have a fully functioning supramodality, fully functioning visual pathways, even though you can't see, you will still develop a theory of mind. So our view is, and this is only about ocular visual impairment, there's no link between a delayed theory of mind and those that have an ocular visual impairment, right? There's no reason to assume that would be the case. One of our speakers later, who I know, Judith from Hungary, she has no vision. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Judith, but her theory of mind is fantastic. I know her very well, and she almost predicts almost everything that I'm going to do, my emotions, my behavior. And so absolutely, we can all think of people we know who we work with who has ocular vision impairment, who are blind and have good theory of mind. So is that due to type tests then, is the earlier things? Do different types of tests activate different areas of the brain? We don't know. Perhaps there are different areas that are not related to theory of mind. Who knows? Who knows? No one knows. No one knows. So CVI and cerebral visual impairment is very limited, clearly a difficult and neglected field. But let's think about it then in terms of CVI. So I talked about theory of mind. Let's think about CVI now. So as you know, vision involves just more than the eyes and the brain. Most of the vision is processed in many, many parts of the brain. And here's our typical slide that we see from Professor Gordon Dutton, where we've got here at the back, the occipital lobe here, which then the visual information is split between the temporal lobe and the parietal lobes here. And this is your dorsal and your ventral stream processing, where motion, motor legs and planning is all done here, and how you coordinate, move through 3D space very quickly is all done here. And yet you're looking at your images, your image store, your word store, your shape, your face recognition is done in your temporal lobe here, all coordinated through your executive functioning planning unit there as well. So this is how vision works. This is your visual functioning pathway here, and any damage here, any deficit to any of the dorsal streams or ventral streams will cause a brain-based vision impairment. Okay, so this is your typical functioning visual pathway here. The temporal lobes appraise the overall visual scene. Sorry, your parietal lobes appraise the overall visual scene. The temporal lobes help you to recognize it, and the frontal lobes mediate choice. Very, very simple way of looking at how we understand the visual pathways in the brain. So occipital lobes, if you've got damage to the left occipital lobe, you have damage to the right visual field. If you've got damage to the right occipital lobe, you're going to have damage to the left visual field. If you've got both so far, you're going to have, probably impaired visual function of acuity, contrast, lack of visual fields on both sides. Moving up to the posterior parietal lobes here. Again, if you've got damage, so around here, if you've got damage here, you're going to have lack of attention on the right side. You're going to miss people. You're going to bump into people. You're going to have reduced accuracy of visual guidance. You're going to be, clumsy. You're going to knock over things. You might even have weakness on the right side of your body. You might also have lack of attention to the left side. If you've got a right posterior parietal lobe, people and events on the left side are going to be missed. People are going to be bumped into. You're going to be right-handed, tend to be. You're going to have weakness on the left. If you've got both in your posterior parietal lobe damage, it's going to be difficult for you to see more than one or two things in your visual scene. You're going to have real difficulty in visually guiding movement. You're really going to have difficulty in mediating between noise and conversation. You're really going to have some difficulty here in ability to move the eyes from one target to the other. and real difficulty in moving, in understanding not accommodation, but how objects move towards you. And again, lower visual field deficit. So in our temporal lobes here, which if you move your hand all the way like this, there where your little finger goes is where your temporal lobes would be inside your brain. So inside the left temporal lobe, you're going to have difficulties to object recognition, difficulty to shape recognition, difficulty in learning the shape of letters. If you've got damage to your right temporal lobe, there, that's going to be impaired face recognition, impaired understanding of the expressions, difficulty in navigating around, and if you're unfortunate to have difficulties in both temporal lobes, you're going to have real difficulty knowing the length and orientation of size of objects, visual memory, and you often have to rely on some kind of auditory memory because that's stored in a different part of the brain. So that's CVI. And as Dutton says, the posterior parietal lobes configure the visual information received from the dorsal streams, from the occipital lobe, and from the middle temporal lobes that process moving imagery. They create non-conscious, virtual, three-dimensional pictorial world that we're in. So this is our visual processing. This is CVI. So if you have damage to any part of this visual tree, then you're going to have difficulties in understanding vision. You will have CVI. So let's look at that then. So many children, we think around 50 to 60%, but not all, of children who have CVI are preterm children. So these are children who were born before week 38 of the gestation period, and usually much earlier. And we know that children who are extremely preterm are at the risk of visual processing due to damage of the brain. We just know there's lots of research confirming that, and that these visual pathways can be picked up. And delays in visual processing and delays in visual information are seen. And we can see these delays in children born very early in preterm. And we know that children have risk of disordered temporal processing. And it might be due to having disorders of perception or interpretation of those facial expressions. And if you have difficulty, if you're born preterm and you have difficulty in understanding the changes in facial recognition, facial expression, that's going to help and have a real problem for you in developing that theory of mind. The ability to find and follow someone in a moving scene or to recognize their movements all may be impaired if you're very preterm. Again, enhancing the likelihood of having a deficit of theory of mind. Rapid sequential imaging capture is needed to pick up social interaction. So I'm moving my hands, I'm talking at the same time, you're all looking at me, and you're able to pick that up very quickly. We know that preterm children, very preterm children, have difficulty, some children of this have difficulty in picking this up. Again, difficulty in picking that up. Again, difficulty in social interaction. Again, difficulty perhaps in a theory of mind. And so let's look at not CVI, but let's look at children with cerebral palsy. So this is kind of the nearest group I've been able to look at in terms of the literature. And there's lots and lots of work on cerebral palsy and theory of mind. There's lots being published about. Very little in terms of CVI, but a lot on cerebral palsy and CVI. And we know that many children, many children with cerebral palsy have CVI. But when this research was done, it was never assessed for that. So let's use cerebral palsy as a kind of de facto relationship for children, for some children with CVI. I'm happy to be criticized on using that, but let's run with it anyway. So in 2017, Adeboye found that children with CP and dystonic CP were much likely to have a lower theory of mind than typically developing verbal children. And this work has been replicated lots and lots of times. Results clearly indicate that children with cerebral palsy encounter problems with recursive theory of mind. So recursive theory of mind is, I know that Vasilis knows that I know that he wants a whiskey. So that's a typical recursive theory of mind. Dahlgren, children perform worse than matched non-CP controls on theory of mind tasks. Faultman, there are children with cerebral palsy who fail to solve the theory of mind tasks, irrespective of the kind of test you do. Impaired theory of mind in children with cerebral palsy is reported. Lots and lots and lots of research seems to indicate that children with cerebral palsy have a deficit theory of mind. And if children with cerebral palsy, in addition to those who are born preterm, look, we're beginning to sound like CVI. That's a CVI group to me. Not all children with CVI, but some children with CVI. Then it just seems to me, that some children, therefore, who have CVI, will have theory of mind. That's what I'm saying. There's no evidence. I could be completely wrong. I could be partially wrong. I could be partially right. I could be entirely right. There's no research for this. But my assumption is that there are a group of children with cerebral visual impairment clearly have a deficit theory of mind, and we just need to go and test it. Looking at the CP literature, looking at the prematurity literature, looking at the multiple disabilities literature, you know, I'm going to stick my neck out and absolutely say there's going to be some children that have a theory of mind deficit. So what does this mean? So how can we help as practitioners? No point me just identifying it. It's kind of useful to see if we can have some solutions, some interventions. And again, I could be entirely wrong. I could be partially wrong. Could be partially right. Could be entirely right. Let's see. So let's think about mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are things that are in our brain. Neurons, a collection of neurons that are in our brains that copy what the other person is doing. So when you're a young baby and you're talking to the young baby, you see sometimes the baby's mouth moving, or when you're watching someone singing a song, you kind of mouth them. These are your mirror neurons. They're copying things here. And for those that have no vision, that can't see this graphic, I've got Garfield, and I think his name is John, is Garfield's owner. And Garfield sticks his paw up, John sticks his hand up in exactly the same way. Garfield sort of like starts moving his hand up and down in a kind of a scratching motion, and then John moves his hand up and down in a kind of a scratching movement. Garfield turns around and uses that scratching movement by John to scratch his back. He's just copying what he's doing. So I wonder if mirror neurons might be a way to do that. And before we get there, let's have a real look about mirror neurons and how the brain is set up. So there's a really interesting study in 2009 by an Italian, Riccardi, and his team. Small numbers, so there's not a lot of power in the study, but it's really quite an interesting study where he got together a collection of blind participants, retinopathy of prematurity, congenital glaucoma, optic nerve atrophy, and 14 sighted participants, and used a whole series of fMRI experiments. And he presented 20 action and 20 environmental sounds. So these are sounds through headphones, through the fMRI, and they had to perform pantomime tasks such as, you know, clipping a ticket or making a cup of tea, doing all of these things, okay? And they were presented with movies and sounds. And they wanted to see if there was different firings, different neural firings and mirror firings between sighted participants and those who were blind. And what he found was that those participants who were blind had exactly the same mirroring system as those that were sighted. The activation of the brains in these two areas, this area here and this area here, on familiar sounds, on unfamiliar actions, and familiar and unfamiliar action sounds, lit up in roughly the same area, okay? The same, but particularly in familiar action sounds. So a train, a bus, a car, all these things mirrored in exactly the same way. The brain fired in exactly the same way for sighted participants as for blind participants. And so it seems that the mirror system, by mirroring those actions and by mirroring sounds and by mirroring things, can develop in the absence of sight. The mirror systems, mirror neurons, do not need sight to occur, right? It can process information about actions that are not visual. So if you don't need to see the actions, you can hear the actions. This might be a way in, okay? So it seems to me that there is that visual experience on supramodal brain doesn't need to happen. We can get the firings within the ventral system and the dorsal system without vision. We can do it by auditory sound. So if this is true, and if this is correct, and if mirror neurons can be activated by auditory sound, then there's something that we agree with Van Dyke, in that using the mirror neuron system in a learning program for children with developmental delay, sensory impairments, multiple disabilities, opens a kind of new way for thinking about habilitation and development of a theory of mind. If we can get the mirror neuron system firing through auditory information, then maybe we can start to develop a much better theory of mind in children with CVI and multiple disabilities. So one way Professor Dutton and Amanda have suggested might be prolong the facial expressions when seeing the child. So mirroring the face, keeping that expression much longer and exaggerated within the child. Complementing emotions through salient language. Speaking clearly, as Professor Dutton says, that radio language, describing clearly about the child's experience. Choosing slow-moving, cluttered material. Minimizing clutter. Identify information that you want to talk about, ensuring that the child can see, getting rid of that lower visual field impairment, and keeping noise to a background. But always, before you do any of this, before you think about any intervention for children with cerebral visual impairment, always, please, not only get their vision checked, right? Everyone gets their vision checked. Think of getting the hearings checked by an audiologist, okay? If we're going to use auditory systems to generate the mirror neurons firing to help develop a theory of mind, we need to know how well the child hears. So please, please, please do this as well. And so really, looking at all the literature out there, it seems to me that, look, we shouldn't put ocular children and brain vision impairment children with learning difficulties all in the same bucket. Each child is different. Each child requires different support. Each child requires that intervention to be tailored to each of those child. It's not a big mixing of bucket. So Vassos, I'm nearly at the end here, so don't worry. So I don't know what it's like to be a bat, okay? I've got no idea. I'm not a bat, and maybe Nagel is right. But I'm beginning to understand, I think, and hopefully you are after this very short presentation, is beginning to understand, I think, what form, function, and kind of mental representation children with CVI and children with CVI and multiple disabilities have, okay? We're beginning to start to unravel that. We're nowhere near this. We're on this journey. We've just started this journey. But it seems to me that absolutely, I'm absolutely convinced that there's a deficit of theory of mind. What we don't know is how it can be reduced, that deficit, and even overturned. This is what we're looking at, and this is what we're developing. But more research on this is needed. So I've taken up 45, nearly 50 minutes of your time, so I apologize for that. So thank you for indulging me. Feel free to email me, follow me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer any questions on email and things like that. But once again, thank you very much. hopefully I have finished my talk. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. You blew our mind, to put it short.
Well, that's what I'm here to do.
And you did it very well. And thank you so much. It was very informative, and included many elements, especially for those who are working with children with, multiple disabilities. So please, any questions? If you have any questions, just raise your hand. Don't be afraid. John is very good giving answers in a nice way.
Really?
Yeah, well, my theory of mind, it's not very good. I think
you have a deficit, Vasilis.
Yes. Well, I have one question. Anyway, this is, I think, your presentation and your study and the whole thing that you brought here belongs to definitely to future. This is the future. So you must be very happy, John. You are not past. You are future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one question. You said something very interesting about the attention and the perception. Attention comes first, and then perception comes like attention is the basis to have a perception. Now, say that we want to study to make some measures. How can we see different levels of attention? Because I suppose that attention as well has many levels. So how you think you can deal with these levels of attentions that correspond to levels of, I don't know, theory of mind? I have no idea.
That's a great question, Vasilis. I think that the levels of attention wouldn't necessarily correlate to, different levels, if you want, of theory of mind. I didn't want to say that. I don't think that would be too much of a direct relationship, and that just doesn't exist. I mean, looking at different types of attention and whether the child attunes itself to it, we can use kind of those perception tests, attention tests. We see many children and children with multiple disabilities, particularly, they seem to attend to particular objects, to particular shapes, to particular colors, and not to others. We can start to develop, looking at those children with multiple disabilities. What is it that they're attending to? Is it shiny things? Is it things that are red? Is it crumply things? Is it noise that they're attending to? So all of our practitioners who are here know which things each child starts to attend to, and you can start to develop and looking at that attention within that, and then assessing that. So there may be formal psychological methods of assessing attention with a child, but when you're working with children with complex additional support needs and complex needs, we know that if that child is attuning to that red doll or that red balloon or that yellow car, it's not really a car. The fact that it's just yellow might be it,
Yeah.
So we can start to think of, or is it shiny, or is it a light? Yeah. Does that child attend to that? So we can start to see for how long that child does. Now that's a way of assessing that attention. Going from there all the way to theory of mind, I can't answer that. I've got no answer to that, I'm afraid.
Okay, but you remind me, in this project, we went to the UK and stayed there for a week in the Whitefield Trust Academy. They are doing a brilliant work there. And I remember there was a professional, he was working with a child, the child couldn't speak at the first sight. The child was looking at a specific point, many complex needs. And I remember the professional, he asked from us to sit to sit in the class and make some sort of, you know, a combined observation. So we were looking, you know, 3 pairs of eyes. We were looking all the things that the professional was showing to the child, like you said, a shiny thing, a yellow thing, something. And in the end, after 6-7 minutes, we met and we were discussing little tiny moments that the child, you know, seemed to, that the child was attending something specific.
Yeah, yeah.
And we picked that thing, you know, the yellow or the red or something with the sound. And from that point, all of us, they started to build up something like, you know, activities to find more and more about the attention of this child. So yes, this is fascinating, but I was so amazing how we can link this to theory of mind. Yeah. That's very interesting.
And don't forget, Vasilis, I think when you're doing those assessments, oh look, you have to wait, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as many of you professionals will know that, you know, when you're giving a child, you know, say that yellow car, the longest I've waited has been something like 7 minutes for a response, right? I'm just sitting there waiting for that response.
Yeah.
It's great. It's the only job in the world I'm paid to sit and be quiet, right? It's fantastic, right? We, as professionals in the field, it's brilliant. We assess these children with multiple disabilities, seeing if there is any attention, and we just have to wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wait, and wait, and wait.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think building on that, but it's building on that. Can we increase the child's attention? Yeah, that's what we all know children who we've done that. And then are we then able to think about those mirror neurons and able to think about theory of mind? So that's the way I would go, Vasilis, is build up the attention, think of mirror neurons, then think about theory of mind.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. They're very useful tips for our work. And another thing, just sorry for taking this opportunity, about the mirror systems. Is anything we know things about synesthesia?
Yeah.
This is about perceptions, yes?
Yeah.
Is this relevant to the mirror system or not?
No, I would say no. I think with synesthesia, somehow the systems have just got mixed up, and I don't think it is related to mirror neurons. I would imagine with synesthesia, if you are smelling colors, then I wonder if the whole system and mirror system has been confused, but I don't know. I would say no.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
My feeling is no, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. John, thank you so much. It's a breakthrough research. I mean, and I mean it when I say you belong to future. This is true. Thank you very, very much. Is anybody that wants to ask John something about the theory of mind, about CVI? No, John says no. Okay, John, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we can carry on. John, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. The next presentation is about is given by Dr. Emine Ayildiz. She's working at Istanbul Medeniyet University, Faculty of Educational Sciences, Department of Preschool Education. Her research interests are in early childhood special education, children with multiple disabilities and visual impairment, in teacher education as well as in parents education. Her presentation focuses on children with MDVI. So is it hard? Is it easy? Let's discover it through Emine's presentation. The title of the presentation is it really difficult to work with children with MDVI? The myths and the facts. So dear Emine, we are all ears.
Kalispera, everyone.
Kalispera.
You're there. Okay. Let me share my screen with you first. Okay. Are you seeing it?
Not yet. Yes, we can see that now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So, why I think about this title, because I heard at the past, and I'm hearing still from the teachers, from the educators, that it is really difficult to work with children with MDVI. And I want to ask myself and to them, actually, is it? And I said the myths and the facts, but myth is a myth, you know, you're the Greek people, you know that. Misbelief, I also add misbeliefs to make my point more clear. So, children with multiple disabilities and visual impairment, when we talk about these children, in the relevant literature, we are seeing a couple of terms. First, multiple disabilities, and it refers to the several disabilities, health and or developmental, behavioral, neurological issues, and the other possible additional problems which can be seen together. And we're also seeing the term multiple disabilities with visual impairment because according to the researchers, the people with visual impairment, almost half of them have also some additional disabilities. And if a person has both his sensories, both of sensories, I mean hearing and vision, we called it deaf blindness, sometimes dual sensory loss we call. So deaf blindness is a combination of visual and hearing impairment, and it may also see some additional disabilities too. Who are working with these children, with children with MDVI? Early interventionists. There isn't any in Turkey. I mean, it's not a profession that I say there are. We can say early interventions exist, but of course there are a lot of experts who are working with the babies, preschool teachers, special education teachers, regular classroom teachers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, medical staff, and so on, you can name it. And I have almost more than 20 years now experience working with children with MDVI and their parents and their teachers. And I also performed some of the research, and I would love to share with you some of the results of this research and the other research, that the difficulties which the professionals faced when they work with the children with multiple disabilities. So negative perceptions about children with disabilities generally. Actually, mostly the educators, teachers, experts, whoever, who are from other fields. For instance, preschool teachers, regular classroom teachers, school management, medical staff, and etc. They really don't know well about children with disabilities. And because of that, they they usually have some negative perceptions. And it's a very important issue. It makes our job difficult. There is also lack of special field knowledge and experience. I'm talking about the professionals who are still working or who used to work with children with MDVI. In one of my research, one of the preschool teacher who has been working with children with MDVI said, I'm having great difficulty in terms of reducing my students' behavior problems because I don't have training for this. And she was right. And there is lack of special field knowledge and experience. That's true, because MD, multiple disability, is not one of the recognized diagnoses in Turkey. So think about a child who has visual impairment, also cerebral palsy, also autism, or maybe autism-like behaviors, also has epilepsy, and etc. This child's diagnosis, not MD, but every one of them. So when you see the report, you are seeing she has a visual impairment, she has epilepsy, she has physical disability, she has intellectual disability, blah, blah. But not MD. And because of that, less academics and experts are working in the field. Of course, there are lack of schools and centers which accept these children. I will talk about this later. I will add something more about something more to this later. Because MD is just, they're just started to understand or hear about MD in special education. Of course, there are no undergraduate, graduate or graduate programs. Of course, our graduate programs, undergraduate programs should be only special education, but there should be graduate programs more. As far as I know, Pınar Şafak, Associate Professor Pınar Şafak, who's in Gazi University, she's raising some master and doctoral students about this topic, but she's working in a department of children with visual impairment. So we need to have maybe a special department for training multiple disabilities, children with multiple disabilities in the universities. There is also some programs for raising special education teachers, but and we are really raising qualified special education teachers, I must say. If they are willing, they are doing best. If they have eager, it comes better. But there is very less courses about multiple disabilities, very less. Another problem, another difficulty that the professionals faced is need in-services trainings or specific certification programs. So when the special education teachers graduated from the programs at the universities, having without any courses about working with children with MDVI or DB, it's a very big problem because back then, a couple of years ago, they were choosing majors like intellectual disability or hearing impairment or visual impairment. Now they have core courses, and in their third and second year, they're choosing some specific courses in terms of being more qualified about a specific kind of disability. But I brought some of the example from the graduate program from one university in US. You can see that they have teaching strategies for students with multiple disabilities, augmentative communication for individuals with disabilities, introduction sign language, and deafness, assessment of low incidence and multiple disabilities. They have very specific courses. But here, especially in the undergraduate program, we can only serve the students, university students, a course called multiple disability, children with multiple disabilities and their education. Of course, there are some MA and PhD level courses, but I might say that we are only one or two people. Pınar, me, and a couple of other academic persons, and it's not enough. So another one, the professionals, the teachers, the educators need to collaborate with the parents, with the families, and they are telling that the mood of the parents, the expectancy level of the parents can be really challenging for them to collaborate for the sake of the child. And the teachers also said because the parents has no support or consulting from other disciplines, because there is no systematical or systematical early intervention works for them. They are really difficult to work with. And the teachers also said that the parents sometimes they don't know about their child's situation. They are not aware of that this child has multiple disabilities, and of course they don't know anything about that. And of course professionals need to collaborate with the other professionals, and the best way to collaborate, the best way for the collaboration for professionals is transdisciplinary works. But I don't know the other countries, but in Turkey we can't do some multidisciplinary collaboration. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can work in an interdisciplinary way, but mostly the professionals, the medical staff are working separately with the child. The teachers, the teacher from the school is working separately. The teacher from the special center is working separately. The therapists are working separately, which if the parents have enough opportunity to afford these therapy, believe me, the MDVI children are going a lot of therapies, like I don't know, speech and language therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, sensory motor integration therapy, horse therapy, blah, 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 blah. So all of those therapists, teachers, professionals are working with the child, but they don't know anything about their works, their efforts. They don't know about the others' works with the child, and it's not good. So now we can talk about the most common myths or misbeliefs, I may say, and the facts about working with children with MDVI. Of course, I just want to mention some of the very important and common things that I am hearing from the parents and the teachers. You can add more of it. I would love that. After I finish, you can say another misbelief, and it's fact. But now I will tell you a couple of these. The myth or the misbelief, one of it is children with MDVI cannot learn because they are very severely disabled. They have very complex situations, conditions. Not far away, not for long time ago, we were hearing educable and trainable intellectual disability in Turkey, and I'm still hearing it. And we were using educable intellectual disability for the mild intellectual children with mild intellectual disability, and trainable we were using for the moderate ones. But what about the severe and profound disabilities? So the children with MDVI have mostly severe and profound disabilities. So they neither can get education, not training, is it? What's the fact? These thoughts and terms are archaic and very inappropriate. There is a motto in special education. I think in education, I love that sentence. Every child learn. Dot. That's it. So you need to find a way. You need to know that this child has her own pace and style. Of course, you need to, as a teacher, as a professional, whatever, you need to find some special teaching methods. But also, you need to have a lot of passion and devotion and patience. You need it. And if you don't have it as a teacher, I don't have to say to you. I don't have anything to say to you. Of course, it will be really difficult for you if you are like this. Another misbelief. Children with MDVI cannot communicate. I wish we can do it interactively, but I know there is a time limit, so I will go on. I talked hundreds of parents. I talked hundreds of teachers in my 22 years of professional life. And when I ask parents and sometimes teacher who has a child with MDVI, when I ask them that your children does your children communicate? The answer was usually no. But when I changed the question and I asked the parent that, okay, can you be able to understand when she's hungry or thirsty, or is your child, can your child show you or show you or indicate that he's hungry or thirsty? The parents instantly said, yes, of course, when she's hungry, she started to cry, or when she's hungry, she grabbed my hand and take me to the kitchen, and etc. So the fact is, every single creature can communicate, and the children with MDVI are not exceptions. They definitely do communicate. When we thinking about communication, if we are talking about or thinking about speech, it's only one way to communicate with each other. But there is pre-verbal communication. We know a lot of things about total communication. There is augmentative and alternative communication devices, systems. There is assistive technology. These are very huge topics, so I don't want to go deeply for that. But even if the child with MDVI has no education at all, let's say she's so small, or she has no education for years, she easily show you her interests, her problems, her needs with some conventional ways or unconventional ways. But it's a communication. It's not a behavioral problem most of the time. Another myth or misbelief: they may have only 2 concomitant disabilities or conditions, or there is limit for the child who has MD in terms of her or his disabilities conditions. I don't know if the audience, other than the guests, other than Turkish people here, heard about double disability, but here in Turkey, I'm hearing it all the time. It's a made-up term, double disability. What's the fact? They may have more than one disability, medical condition, and or behavioral and neurological issues. There's no limit for the comorbid condition that the children with multiple disabilities may have. And there is no need to determine the most severe disability of the child. If the child has visual impairment, but her physical disability is more severe, it's fine. He's still a child with MDVI. So, and if the child have more than one condition, disability, and something like that, you cannot plan a program for her with the teachers or specialist for the child's every single disability or condition, because this child has visual impairment, intellectual impairment, physical disabilities. Yes, of course, now this child is not only visual impairment, so she doesn't need to work her skills with the visual impairment, teacher with visual impairment. She doesn't need to work some of the skills with only the teacher who are specialized for intellectual disability, and etc. This child needs to work with a teacher who knows MD or MDVI well. So let's move on to the next one. So the only experts and or the teachers who have specialized trainings can or should work with the children with MDVI. I'm hearing it from some of the special education teachers too. I heard with these ears from a teacher who are specialized for visual impairment that I'm so sorry, I can't work with this child. I just can teach her Braille. I just can work with the child who is smart and can learn Braille. And if this blind child has more issues, I can't do that. It was a special education teacher. And I'm not blaming the other field experts because of that. The fact is, if someone claims that if she knows the child development and education and indicate herself as a teacher, this person can not maybe easily, but can work or find a way, at least find a way to work with the children with MDVI. Preschool education teachers, for instance, they know the child development from prenatal period till the end of the early childhood education period. So they should be able to work with any child. Of course, they need some guidance, some maybe special trainings, but making excuses about their specialty is unacceptable. I'm a preschool teacher. I can only work with the children with typical development. I cannot work with the blind children or children with MDVI. The school education teachers can say that. I'm not letting my students in my university to say that. So we are, as a department, we are really trying to raise them like that. Another misbelief. Children with MDVI cannot be taught academic skills. So, yes, a lot of children with MDVI have very severe cognitive issues, but the number of children with MDVI whom you can work academic skills with are not really few. Even if some of the children with MDVI have severe intellectual disability, they can be and should be taught academic skills. We call them functional academic skills. And we need to keep in mind that Professor Ravencroft also said that every child is different So we cannot say that MDVI children are not academic. We can't work academic skills with them. We need to know the child very well, assess her strengths, skills, and then organize, plan, and implement this child's IEP, and most of them can surprise you, believe me. Another one, children with MDVI cannot benefit from inclusion, or it's impossible for them to be included to the regular schools or classrooms. The fact, there is no argue that it's a very basic and clear and certain human right. I'm talking about the education. There's no way to argue about that. When you look at the regulations of the countries, including my country, you're reading very, very nice sentences in there, very nice articles in theirs, and but the implementation can be really difficult. But the system, the possibilities can make it difficult, impossible. So if I speak for my country, now I'm supporting to start schools for the MDVI children themselves for now, because I don't think that we really understood the difference between inclusion and integration at all. So yeah, I want to talk about that maybe for later, but there's no time. So I think I made my point. The parents of children with MDVI have psychological issues. There is another misbelief or myth. They are traumatized, so collaboration with them is so difficult or impossible. Okay, you know what? Parents know their children best. They have they have many roles. There are assistants, or we are their assistants in the road of getting in a good place for the child. We are trying to make the child with MDVI MDVI's life more qualified. So we need to act together. They are the best advocates, and they are helping each other to understand what is to be a parent, what's to be like a parent of a child with MDVI. So yeah, but if a professional ever meet a parent who is impossible, I might say that I met one, at mostly two of them, or very hard to communicate with. I think this teacher should find a way to get along. If this professional claims that she wants to improve the quality of life of the children with MDVI and their parents, and to advocate for their rights. If this teacher really devoted herself to make these people's life better, qualified, she should find a way. Of course, teachers are the persons who needs respect, and also the teachers also respect to the parents. So it's only a communication thing. There should be a way to work together, to make collaboration for the sake of the child. Lastly, I want to show you some of my students' pictures here. Some of them are now older. Some of them are from our another Erasmus Plus project, Eris early intervention program, and they're just wonderful. Yeah, we need to work a lot and advocate a lot for them and for their parents to get their rights, educational and human rights, and make their life better and more livable. Thank you for your attention.
Dear Amina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. You brought us in reality in terms of the the situation with schools, with practitioners, with law, with teams, networks. This is the reality. It happens in many countries.
Yep.
We know the problem, yes. And I was wondering, while you were delivering your talk, your speech, you have big load on your shoulders, because I mean, you are in charge of all these things to make this training. And anyway,
I love this burden. I'm fine with that.
Of course you love it, but you mentioned interdisciplinary teams, multidisciplinary teams. We cannot make it if we are not, members of a team. Of course you love, otherwise, yeah. Do we have any questions? Please raise your hand. Stand up and fight. No, stand up and ask. Don't fight. Yet.
Fight for the children, children with MDY and their parents.
Fight for their rights. Do we have any questions, please? You can raise your hand, and I give you the. Oh, we have a question from Christiana Zotu. Yes,
okay.
You can.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Emine, and thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to, with Lenya and Eunicia, we're here, and we're very close to what you have in your country, what we have in our country as far as education is concerned. One thing that we would like to mention is that as far as the inclusion of MDVI is concerned, that in our case, or in the cases that we have in Amimoni, we believe that inclusion is the right. Sorry, the MDVI persons we have in Amimoni, they wouldn't and they couldn't be included. If they were, that would be a problem for them. I don't know what, probably there's a range of course, on the severity of the handicaps. But for us, it would be, we believe that they have the right not to be included, but to have the right, to have the proper training according to their needs. I think that we cannot say that, for generally speaking, that all MDVI should be included. All MDVI persons should be included.
Okay, actually, I didn't say that. I said that inclusion is a human right, and inclusion is not a philosophy, not a philosophy about only special education for everybody. And it's a right, and in our regulation, there is you can see it, there's a right, but for the children with MDVI right now, for my country, because it's not, it's now we are just learning, we are just raising new academics and new teachers about that. We need some time. But from my mind and from my heart, I believe that every single child has this right. But for the sake of the child, you know the term least restrictive environment. If the specific child who has MDVI, and if it's not good for him to go to the regular classroom, no, I don't support
So we
that.
agree. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Christiana, you can lower your hand if you want, please. Do you have any other question? No. Is there any other question here? Emine, thank you very much for giving this, because, I mean, I urge you, while I was listening to you, I urge you to go to the government. You have all the misbeliefs, all the weak things, if I can use this term weak, that the teachers think about MDVI. You can build up a perfect corpus of training and change the beliefs of the teachers. For instance, John was saying about theory of mind. He opened a window and he said, well, he said many things, but one of the things that he told us was for the attention. Say, look, if a child with many complex needs has a little tiny attention, then you can build up a whole, construction on this.
You're right.
Bit by bit with patience. And John mentioned as well patience. He was waiting 6-7 minutes for a response. 6-7 minutes is a huge time, waiting to get something, a sign for the child. So you have a whole corpus now of all these misbeliefs. And I think it is a very good opportunity to go and find these, policy makers in the government. See, look, we have ready things. We can train people, not for 2 years, small, quick, fast training things, and just give us the money to do it.
Yeah. I just forgot about to mention something, and Pınar Şafak from Gazi University, she started to build a team to make a new program for the children with MDVI, and we worked for this program for almost 6 or 7 months as a team together, and it's about to published. But we need to do more. We are doing something, but we need to do more and more and more.
Okay.
And I forgot about that. I want to thank you for this great opportunity to be a part of this great conference, and a very effective and great project. Thank you.
Well, this is all about build up networks, to cultivate this thing in our mind. It's about this theory of mind, whatever is this. I don't know. Yes. Anyway, if you believe in this, if you have this concept, you can convey this message as well. So thank you very much. And this struggle, mainstream, inclusion, special schools, all these for us, I mean, for the people who are in special education, we see only needs and we see only assessments. This is the thing that we see. Now, if we call it special school, if we call it mainstream school, if we call it, a pub is a perfect place to mainstream situations and people, Yes, why not? So it doesn't matter what is the name of this. You laugh at me, yeah. Like anyway,
I will have apple juice.
yes. Okay, I stop here. Thank you very much, Emine, because
Okay,
you brought, you know, these bridges, have bridges between theory and practice. Now I will invite, because we have to make a break as well, Judith Gombas. She's working as an assistant professor at ELTE University of Science in Hungary, and her main research interests are adapted sport and physical education and issues of adult life, like parenting, work, access to free time activities, and so on. And of course, she is focusing on individuals with visual impairments. Her talk will focus on the very crucial and up-to-date situation, which is the COVID situation. And the title of her talk is about experiences of Hungarian college and university students with visual impairment with online education during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I will share with you. Sorry. Where is it? There we are.
A warm welcome to all of you.
Is it okay? Do you listen to Judith?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, great. Okay, great.
My name is Judith Gombas. When I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking a lot how to start. You know, those knowledgeable in rhetoric say that it's worth starting a presentation with something that just catches the audience's attention. But actually, I realized that it's much more important, and perhaps we can say that's the story, to tell you how I am making this presentation. It's a funny thing, you know, as I am blind, I just cannot check myself on the camera. I think I'm sharing a file. However, I always, when I do a similar thing, I always ask my son to check up on the screen, to tell me whether my hair is okay, and all these things. So we can definitely say that this genre is not for people with a visual impairment, or is partly perhaps, or let me say I'm not the most confident in this genre. However, I'll just try to do my best. So this presentation is going to be about the experience of Hungarian college and university students with a visual impairment or deafblindness, about the spring 2020 lockdown and their experiences with online education. However, I'm pretty sure the story is very similar, not just for me, but for many other academics with a visual impairment. You're going to get a response why I'm doing the presentation in this format very soon. So I made this little research or investigation with a student of mine, Dorina Dörmer. It was also her thesis project. In Hungary, the lockdown began, or better to say, educational institutions were closed on the 16th of March. Of course, it brought chaos in education. Many institutions and different universities responded really differently. At ELTE University, where I am working and when Dorina is a student, we had an immediate Easter break. So the break was immediately starting. So we had a week to think over how to arrange our lessons and how to arrange online education. As I have said, it really was a chaos. Of course, the universities tried to do their best in offering as many different online solutions as possible. Lots of platforms were suggested or recommended to academics. For example, we have never worked before with PowerPoint presentations with an audio part, or very few of my fellow colleagues have experience with Canvas. It could be another presentation to what extent Canvas is accessible. So lots of platforms came to our views. And it was really characteristic that we started using many of our administration systems more intensively. We have, I would say, 3 major systems that we use in Hungarian colleges and universities: Moodle, QSpace, and Neptune. Now the problem, as you are going to see during my presentation with all these platforms, is that they are partly accessible. And what happened in March was, and that what happened in all spring was, that many academics put a great emphasis on these systems and decided to upload their materials. So lots of reading tasks, lots of files were uploaded, for example, to Moodle. And most of the administration stories that you can generally arrange just going to the university in person, meeting a nice lady who helps you with the forms, for example. All these things were arranged online. We're going to see that this was in part a great advantage, but on the other hand, it was a challenge for students. Now the aims of our investigation, as I have already mentioned some, were the following. We wanted to see how the living conditions of students with visual impairment changed during the lockdown. We were also really interested to see how their support needs changed in this very particular situation. Of course, it was very important to have a clear picture of how accessible online education and all these platforms were. And we were definitely interested in the advantages and disadvantages of online education, what felt positive, what felt negative. And we used snowball sampling, and we had 14 respondents. Dorina made semi-structured interviews with our respondents, 10 of whom were ladies and 4 of whom were young gentlemen, aged between 19 and 32. 10 of them were blind for low vision, and we had 1 deaf-blind respondent. Now, their living conditions, 6 of our respondents said they live either with their families or with their partners. And what is more important for us in this particular situation was that 4 students who generally stay in a dorm were obliged to move home because all the dorms were locked down. Of course, most of them come from smaller towns or villages in the Hungarian countryside. We were trying to map what particular devices all these students use. All of them said they use either JAWS or NVDA, and all of them also have a mobile phone, mostly iPhone, which they use with VoiceOver. One respondent uses a CCTV. Our deafblind respondent uses a hearing aid, and you may be surprised, but I really want to stress that no one has a Braille display. So this is why we put this result here, because unfortunately, this may show how tough it is for people in Hungary to get a Braille display due to its high price. As for support needs, well, most of the students, 12 out of the 14, I think we made a mistake on the PowerPoint, but we had 14 respondents. So 12 out of the 14 respondents said that the education administration system called Neptune is almost impossible to use alone. So in this system, you can register for exams, for courses, you can hand in any form, you can, well, you need to upload your thesis in Neptune. It is a very widely used system in Hungary. In most universities, Neptune is used. Unfortunately, the student platform or the student part of Neptune is only in part accessible, whereas the part for teachers is not at all accessible. There's a lot going on around Neptune. It's just something we don't understand, how Neptune is officially set to be accessible while it's not, and it's really causing a lot of difficulties for students and teachers with a visual impairment. And another area 6 students mentioned was scanning and formatting things. So they said they do need assistance in these things. And the third thing was adapted exams. They said, all of them said that actually these are things they generally need support in. However, during the lockdown, it was absolutely tricky to get enough support because, you know, as I have already said, generally you just go in to the university, you meet some lady who works with administration and she can help you with the forms and so on. And during the lockdown, this was simply not an option. Yes, we were really curious to see how online lessons worked. Interestingly, 3 out of the 14 respondents said they had no online lessons at all. So what happened was all the materials they had to work with were uploaded on Moodle. They had to download and read all this stuff. It was quite funny. One of our respondents actually said he was wondering why this was more comfortable for teachers because he thought it's a lot more work than giving, you know, real-time online lessons. We asked our respondents what video conferencing platforms they had to use. You can see a really wide range. They mentioned altogether 6 different video conferencing platforms. And they said that they had to use at least 1 or more of these. So Zoom, Google Meet, Google Hangout, Teams, WebEx and Skype were the platforms that our respondents mentioned. Of course, we were really curious to see how satisfied they were with all these platforms, how easy it was for them to use these platforms. Now, 6 out of our 14 respondents found Teams totally inaccessible. And now this may explain to you why I decided to record my presentation on Zoom. This is a platform where I can easily share my screen. I can easily check what I'm doing. It tells me everything. Let me stress that a lot of improvements have been done to many of the video conferencing platforms. So Zoom has changed a lot, Teams has changed a lot. However, using Teams is still very tricky. One of our respondents said, it is officially said to have been tested with screen readers. Well, perhaps it really was tested, but it's only in part usable. So I'm not going to go into many details concerning using Teams, the desktop version especially, with a screen reader, but you must memorize lots of short keys, and I must admit it's not at all logical, so orientation is not so easy. Another respondent simply said about Teams, it's a nightmare. And there was another complaint about WebEx saying that signing in was already impossible. We were really curious to know if there were any positive impacts of online education. Many of our respondents said that it was really flexible, so they could manage their time really flexibly. They had more free time, they had more time to spend with their families. A gentleman who does sports also mentioned that he had much more time to do sports, which he enjoyed a lot. It was really nice to see more students saying that fellow students helped one another much more during the lockdown than they would do in other times. Yeah, and one person mentioned that administrative tasks became quicker. So although support was needed for being able to use Neptune, this administrative system, but you know, it was easy. You could upload a form and answers arrived much more quickly than general. Of course, we were interested in negative experiences too. Now, most of our respondents mentioned that it was really frustrating that they had to use different kinds of video conferencing platforms they had never ever used before, and it was a challenge that they had very short time to get familiar with these platforms. It was even tough to find out who they can turn to for support. One of the students mentioned that it was absolutely clear to her and clear for the students that, you know, teachers were just like trying to learn how to use all these platforms. So I must say academics were not much ahead of students in many cases. Yeah, and so there was a very limited time to do all this, and in many cases it was not easy to find who could help students with their accessibility issues. Luckily, the community with the visual impairment people, the community of people with visual impairments reacted quite quickly. So, for example, There's a Facebook group called Students During the Lockdown, where people can put all their questions. And there were several other groups, mostly Facebook groups, where there was a lot of chatting going on about the different challenges and difficulties. And yeah, among the negative impacts, all the other online platforms were mentioned. So as I have said, many things have changed since spring. Universities started their normal life in September, with some exceptions who immediately went online. Most universities started education in person. Of course, we were all obliged to go online by the end of November. But it would be really interesting to carry on with our research, of this kind of research, to see you know, what changes students with visual impairments or deaf blindness are experiencing. And it would be really important to elaborate guidelines for academics, for institutions, for the support teams who help students with disabilities, on how they can be supported, or people at the university, I must say also academics with a visual impairment, can be supported during online education and in times of another future lockdown. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vasily.
Where are you, Judith?
I'm here.
Ah, you are here.
You should, yeah, perhaps you can find me somewhere. You know,
Oh,
I joined
yes,
this nightmare.
Yes. We got you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thanks indeed for sharing. Thanks for doing this job for me.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Any questions? No questions. So silent audience. Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Actually, my friends are laughing that Zoom should somehow pay me because I'm always advertising Zoom. But to be very honest, so far that seems to be the ever most accessible solution. So I do all my teaching on Zoom, although ELTA uses Teams. But yeah, Zoom is the platform that most students were happy with. So.
All right. I was impressed about the number of the platforms you are using in the university. It was 5 platforms.
Yeah, luckily we're not using all of them. So, you know, as people in our sample were from or come from different universities, this is why we have such a huge number. But during the first weeks, there really was a chaos until ELTA decided or voted for Teams. Now, funnily or luckily, all the regulations and all the rules include, for example, exams can be either on Teams or on Zoom, because my bosses know that I do need Zoom. Yeah, we also tried WebEx, but that was not a success, not only from an accessibility point of view, but yeah, there are many different universities using many different platforms, and that really was a chaos for people.
Anyway, I was impressed because you had also a deafblind person in your research, which I found it very interesting to have a deafblind person. We need people like you, if I can say this. We need people because, you know, actually you open another window, which is the design for all. For example, if we want to talk about inclusion in tertiary education, in colleges and universities, we have to have the, you know, the basement. The basement is the platforms. if the
Yeah,
platform
and
is
just one
accessible,
thing that I
so
didn't stress enough is perhaps really there's a huge difference between usability and accessibility. So, you know, a company may say, yeah, we have tested our product. That's super accessible. So we put a nice logo there. But, you know, I think accessibility means that I just don't need to spend, I don't know, 3 times as much time as you need to be able to use that product. So yeah, it's nice to have short keys. Yeah, nice that I can use my brain and memorize loads of things. But to be honest, for me, accessible is what doesn't demand me to put lots of extra effort in. So that's a key thing here.
Yeah, this is true. So Judith, thank you so much, because you added something very significant in this day.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Now we are half an hour. You know, the program is yes, it's not that, you know, terrible situation. Just half an hour. We are back from our program. Let's have a break. You know, stretch our legs, drink something, and be back in 10 minutes time. Is it okay? Okay, I can see, John. You have your equipment. 10 minutes time, we can please stay here, stay connected, because after the break, we will carry on with the great Romanian team according to the program. Kiriazi, are we okay?
Yes, 10 minutes.
Yes, 10 minutes time. So it's 25 past 7. We can meet in 10 minutes time. Is it okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Meet again in 10 minutes. But generosity, you know, something very rare to find nowadays. Okay. Now, we carry on with the program, with our program. We have this lovely Romanian team, which consists of Dr. Andrea Hathazi, Dr. Ioana Serban, Dr. Christina Balas-Bakonski, I don't know, and of course, Dr. Marian Padure. All this fantastic team works at the Babes-Bolyai University, which is located in Cluj in Romania. The domain of their research interests are education and rehabilitation of people with multiple disabilities, with and without visual impairments, assessment, as well as intervention programs. The title of their presentation is Reflection-Based Strategies in the Professional Development of Teachers in MDVI. So, dear Andrea, I suppose you will start.
I will start, but
the colleagues... The digital floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. So I will start, but because it was a huge teamwork, the presentation, but also our participation to the project, we will share the presentation. So I'm going to share. I hope you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. So first, we want to express our gratitude that we had the opportunity to participate in the project, in the PRECIVIM project, and of course that we were involved in the training process, because not only that we shared our experiences, but we also had the opportunity to learn a lot. And the title of our presentation reflects what we have acquired within these 3 years during our meetings, during the training, and during the use of a platform, online platform, that we could carry on the training with our trainees. So reflection-based strategies in the professional development of teachers in MDVI will refer to communication, to professional development, to reflection, and of course the impact of reflection-based strategies on the work of the teachers. So communication, just a few words. Development of communication abilities is a complex process that must be approached from a continuous, systematic, and structured perspective. MDVI children acquire and develop communication skills based on various factors, and in time they learn how to use different communication systems in order to express needs, but not only to express needs, but to become aware that they have an impact on other people or the environment. The professional development that we have been involved in, referring to development of communication abilities through the competencies that were increased for teachers in intervening, assessing these communication abilities, mean that effective professional development is an ongoing process. Even if you are an experienced teacher, even if you have an expertise as a professional, does not mean that you don't need to have mentors, does not mean that you don't need to enter any continuous development programs for your profession. Professional development includes the training, practice and feedback, direct instruction with describing, explaining, demonstrating, guided practice, structured conversations, management of resources and rules, evaluations and monitoring, deciding on aims, objectives, curriculum, sense of purpose, and the ambiance. So it is really an extended perspective on what should be and what should know and what should do a teacher in the field of MDVI. So the competencies for the professionals, this is a huge debate in the late years regarding how should teachers be trained in order to improve the competencies, but not only that they should improve the competencies, but they get aware of these competencies and how they reflect on these to be improved. Professionals should develop skills to support the evaluation and intervention of communication. That is a fact that we know. So the questions which must be answered are: how do I start? Where do I start? What is happening? Is this all right? Is this behavior a form of communication? How does the child learn? How do I know that he has learned? How do I feel about it? How can I better understand? How can I better support the communication needs and interests of the child? Studies say that it is not important only to know how the child learns and communicates, but it is very important to answer the question, why does he learn and why does he communicate? So you see, when answering these questions, you start to become a reflective practitioner. And in the project, we really liked this approach that we include in our training this competence that we focused on, that the trainees, the teachers that we trained would become reflective practitioners. And for us, it was the same, monitoring and observing and giving them feedback through the reflective logs that they were used as instruments. We also became and improved our competencies as being reflective practitioners, or maybe I should say reflective trainers or mentors. What are the professional responsibilities in this, not only in the education of children with MDVI, but in education generally? That making a reflection about teaching is very important. How do I teach, and what is the impact of my teaching on the student, and how does the student sees me? That is also very important, that I should teach from the perspective of the student and not teach from my own perspective. Creating documents and resources. It was really great that we had the opportunity to be very structured. I may say, without offending somebody, that teachers are not very fond of documents and resources to create, to develop, and to monitor them in time, and to come back and change if something needs to be changed. But we should focus on this. And the teachers, the professionals who were involved in the training had to do this, to create the documents, to come back to the resources that were developed. and that enabled them to see their own professional, course, and how things change in time when you reflect on them, and especially when you write them down. That is also very important. Communication with the family, engaging in the professional community. We believe that engaging in the professional community is a must, and individuality in this field is not something that we should promote, because you need somebody to discuss with, but not only to discuss with, but somebody that criticizes you. And we should be able to accept that criticism, it is good when it is not when it is in the benefit of changing your perspective or understanding some other people's perspectives. Professional development, that is known, that also it is obligatory to have and to undergo programs, different and various programs of professional development, to update your knowledge and to understand why things may happen, and of course how can you implement these new information, knowledge and working skills in your professional activities. Relevance of the reflection-based strategies. So as I said, promoting the concept of a reflective practitioner, that is very important. As you know, a reflective practitioner always investigates, restructures, and reconsiders his planning, observations, and understanding. Supporting the integration of the perspective of others into your own activity and experience. How can I adapt, or how can I use the best practices of other people? And this is also in order to overcome a resistance to change. And resistance to change in teachers is also something that unfortunately frequently happens, even though they go to training programs and they can understand and they acknowledge the good impact of the new technique that they learn about. It is very difficult to implement it and to start using it, and it is called the resistance of change, which is very, very common. So I think this project changed this, and the trainees, the teachers started to use this feedback that was given to them, and they started to get aware that new techniques or new methods or what they already used was having an impact on the abilities of communication in the children that they were working with, or in the young people that they were working with. Highlighting the skills of a professional to understand how their students learn and communicate. As I said, not only how, but very, very important, why. The significance of the reflective approach means that we imply the experience-based learning, and also studies say that teachers or professionals will start using what they have learned if they can see the practicality of what has been taught and what has been shown. So the huge value of this project was that the teachers, the specialists, were working in their centers with the children, with the people with multiple disabilities. So the feedback was given specifically to the context that they were working with, but not only to the context, but the needs. So teachers, professionals have different needs, but it is sometimes difficult to see how can I use what I have learned or what I know in this specific content and in this specific context and for my specific needs. And it involves a lot of self-observation, awareness, self-analysis, reflective thinking, questioning, empathy, intuitive knowledge, expanded thinking. So the critical reflection is an intentional and continuous process of identification and evaluation of the validity of teachers' assumptions. And here, just to say a few words about assumptions, sometimes in our field, MDVI or deafblindness, they say don't assume. But when we relate this to reflection, I think it is good to assume. Why should you assume? Because in this way you have a hypothesis that you will confirm in time through your evaluations and observations. You need to attribute some meaning to and significance to what you observe, and that is assuming that what is happening for sure has a cause or a consequence if we think of communication or behavior. So a teacher specialist should be able to demonstrate the ability to carry out an assessment, design and implement appropriate curricula and intervention, choose and use adequate methods of teaching and appropriate methods of communication, design an individualized intervention plan, and this was here substituted with the reflective log. So the reflective log should be seen as an individualized intervention plan, though it may have different components, but it's a document that can be easily used and with a great functionality. Work in a team and belonging to a professional community, and it felt like I may speak for the other members of the Babes-Bolyai team, that it felt really like a professional community, even though we were far away. I mean, Romania, Greece, but still. And support and team up with parents. Always, though, in this project, parents were not that much as a direct beneficiary, but I'm sure we can say that they are indirect beneficiaries. So being a reflective practitioner requires systematic and structured training to attribute meaning, to integrate peer advice, to recommend from the recommendation from supervisors or mentors or personal experiences should be also included in our own practice all the time. And as I said, the project was a huge opportunity to develop and use reflective-based strategies, starting not only in the training, but all the stages of the project. So for the scoping of policies, practices, and research from all partner countries, the results were analyzed and the framework for professional development was created, considering all the needs of the practitioners from all 4 participating countries. The transnational meetings were opportunities for discussions, planning of training and events, reflection on intellectual outputs, overview of the project and possible future interests and research. And the professional development program consisted in the training manual, on-site training, online group supervision, and the reflective logs. So the training manual referred to an analysis of specific communication approaches used with MDVI children. It encompasses the finding from literature and structures the main methods. Specialists can find reflection-based assignments, tasks, and examples, and it was conceived as a tool which professionals can turn to for alternatives and reflective analysis. The face-to-face trainings, that I have to say I loved, was supported also to develop a sense of belonging to a multidisciplinary team and a professional community. Also, it was the opportunity to have an inventory of possible challenges and possible solutions. It was encouraged during the training that we have questions and introspective techniques. And also, it was the reflective strategies were encouraged due to the stimulated case studies discussions that we had every day, and it was a huge part of the training, putting theory into practice and practice into theory. And the online group supervision sessions, which lasted for 5-6 months, they highlight very well the reflection process of the participants, their strategies, how they see the intervention, what they feel about intervention with MDVI child, how their relationship changes each session, what challenges they face, how they support the families, which other colleagues can bring to their experience, the value of the team perspective, different approaches from different professionals, coping mechanisms, and new interpretations and new developments regarding the intervention. So from here, Joanna will take on, and she will present the reflective logs.
Yes, so the reflective logs were the final component of our training program in this project, and I'm going to talk about what a reflective perspective focuses on in this type of individual assessment and supervision tool, which is the reflective log. So first of all, the reflective writing is meant to help a professional develop a deeper learning style by understanding the process rather than memorizing facts. What does this mean? It means that it addresses the idea of looking back to your own activity and writing down the steps of your actions. So in doing this, the specialist will automatically gain a perspective of their strategies and a personal feedback. So while someone is writing back the activity they have done with the child, they are practically constantly observing and analyzing the processes. And what happens? Alternatives may come to mind. What else could I have done? How could I have done it better? Because in that moment, I'm concentrating on the child and its needs, not on my own behavior. So I'm doing the best I can in the situation, but when I look back at it, alternatives may come to mind, and I may find or seek different angles of interpretation of a behavior or of intention of communication that I see. Reflective thinking, it addresses relating, experimenting, exploring, and connecting theory and practice. In our reflective logs, we have constantly related the theoretical framework from the manual with the examples and case studies discussed, as Andrea said, during the face-to-face training, and then, of course, with the group supervision sessions. And finally, bringing the focus in the end to each personal experience, to each case that was highlighted and professional development that took place in the reflective logs. So between reflection between the mentor and the trainee. The reflective writing is used to improve professional decision making. Why? Because first of all, the specialist himself will look back at some decisions that they have made in order to achieve their short-term goals. So in our experience during the training with the reflective logs, at the end of the reflective logs, a lot of participants had already made new plans or had a new or better vision on how to improve their intervention, how to improve their relationship with the child. So the reflective logs require, of course, describing these experiences and critically reassessing all the activities, thus achieving, of course, a higher level of understanding. These reflective logs were used in our project as an individual evaluation and supervision tool. So they were implemented for about 6 months during the most active professional engagement of the participants. Each of them had selected 1 or 2 case studies that they were reflecting upon and giving feedback to. The reflective logs were also strongly connected with all the other training components, as I have previously stated, and they also offered the possibility of a refined understanding of the communication process and how it works in terms of self-internalization by each professional through their own experiences, of course. So these reflective logs gave the participants the possibility to reflect on their own intervention by, first of all, acknowledging the objectives they have achieved, because in the reflection log there was a section that was asking them how do they feel about achieving what they have proposed, and very, very important. About stating how they managed challenging behaviors that could have appeared from the children during the intervention, and then they had to develop some coping mechanisms of this. Of course, very important, recognizing and naming their feelings about the intervention, which was extremely good regarding professional growth, and revealing what has changed in their professional development as regarding to relationship they had with their child, or a better understanding of the child, or what we have noticed, a higher acceptance or tolerance of the child's opinions or behaviors, and so on. So, of course, after their own reflection, a very important component of the reflective logs were the feedbacks sent by the mentors. This feedback allowed the specialists to reflect further by comparing this feedback to their own thoughts, as well as to the opinions of the other team members. And we think this is extremely important in this kind of training program, to be able to analyze these three perspectives, your own, your mentors, and your team members, because the reflection process and the understanding of all the strategies, it must be accomplished through a complex combination of these perspectives. And of course, the biggest challenge is to permanently put the child and his interests and needs first. So your own perspective should, of course, find some common ground with the mentor's feedback and the other team members' opinions. So this can be a challenge. Where am I and how do I connect with what the others say? Because you are part of a transdisciplinary team. You are not alone with the child. So you need to find these connections. And of course, family's perspective should also be reflected into the intervention process, as that is the first and most secure environment of the child. And what is very important is that all the intervention have been improved during the 6 months of the unfolding of these reflective logs, and the contribution of the reflective logs to the personal growth of each professional was undeniable, and the final comments of each professionals are approved to this statement. So we think that this is the great value of this project, what it brought in terms of professional growth and reflective techniques and communication development, of course. So this kind of individual process ensures the specific significance of the communication development, of course, in the context of MDVI children, where the diversity of the needs and the diversity of their abilities is so great.
Cristina.
Okay, I will, thank you. I will share with you some conclusions. First of all, as my dear colleague says before, we had really a great opportunity to learn in this project. It was really for us, in the same time with the others, a real professional growth. I think that my point of view is also Andreas and Joanna's point of view. Of course, for the conclusions, this project has emphasized most of all the need to have mentors, and really mentors are very important, and partners with a constructive opinion and feedback. Then, of course, the professional development conducted in all the countries as a multicultural approach has highlighted the importance of reflecting from the MDVI child's perspective. And of course, as Joanna said before, we also thought that the child has to come first. And everything has to be around the child, around his needs, around his behaviors, around his communication needs. Reflective logs should be considered part of the intervention process. And we saw during the project and all the reflective logs that that really it had been a part of the intervention process. Communication development of an MDVI child can be built only through a functional curriculum. We have to do adaptations for a good curriculum for one child who had so many challenges in communication. The specialist should always aim the understanding of the objectives and the anticipations of finalities. Of course, as a real final conclusion, evaluation and intervention practices need to be permanently perfected and reflected upon, and we should all do this all the time. When working with MDVI children, we should always convert reflections in actions. So not only reflecting, but also acting is very, very important. So a great thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this project.
Thank you so much for this lovely presentation. Thank you, John. He's clapping. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Are there any questions? It was, you know, you point at the heart of this project. Thank you very much for this, Andrea, Romanian team. Any questions? Well, if I want to just to highlight, it is the professional development, which is based on the element of reflection. John, I want to ask you, can we say that this reflective thinking, I mean, from the teachers, from the professional side, this reflective thinking may lead teachers to develop skills regarding theory of mind?
Well, I thought this was really a great presentation, so thank you very much for this. And I was thinking, oh, I need some of this documentation, so you have to tell me later how to get hold of this, because this would be great. Absolutely, you know, that development of reflective thinking and trying to understand their teacher's own practice, trying to understand what has impact, trying to understand how we can improve the lives of children that we're working with is absolutely key. Absolutely. And again, it's all about, for me, to some degree, is trying to understand that nature of representation. And indeed, I have no problems in agreeing with you that, you know, more reflective thinking about my work, about the child in front of me can enhance that theory of mind from the teacher. So I thought this was great, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, I thought so. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea, Christina, Joanna. Thank you so much.
And Marianne.
Yeah. And Marianne. What is Marianne? What is my family? And of course, something that we will show you in the end of this meeting is that the Romanian team actually opened a window. It's the project window. So there are things there for this project. Now, let me invite the team from Amimoni. Amimoni is the Pan-Hellenic Association of Parents, Guardians and Friends of Multiply Disabled Visually Impaired People. The goal of Amimoni is to establish full rights for education for all children with multiple disabilities, and above all this is to maintain their dignity. They are doing a fantastic job in their center, and the title of the talk is Structure, Intervention and Training to MDVI People Leading to the Organization of Behavior. So please, Christiana Zotou, Dionisia Vasilara, and Lenia Aidonidou, you can take the lead for this presentation. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you. We will start immediately to save time. Sorry. Don't look at that. Don't look at that.
But
Okay.
we are looking at that. We are looking at that.
Yes. Now, now you may.
Okay,
So,
we look. Okay.
So we come from Amimoni. As Vasilis said, it's a Pan-Hellenic Association of Parents. Amimoni's mission is the provision of lifelong education, care and support to any MDVI person and their family, covering their special needs at any age for as long as needed. We say that because in Greece there isn't any other establishment that covers this kind of needs, which of course, as you know, are huge. So Amimoni is doing it, and for the last 27 years that it exists, it has developed a lot of important and useful services. But now we're talking about IRIS, our daycare center. This is the main service of Amimoni that participated in PRECIVIM program. There we have a structured day program, of course, individualized educational program and individual and group activities. As you very well know, we don't need to mention now what means multiple disabilities or multiple handicaps. You know that. The combination of at least two disabilities determines a unique pattern of development affecting perception of the environment, motivation, and of course, communication. Perception of the environment, motivation, and communication mean that our trainees, our children and adults, we refer to children from 5 years old to the age of 46 at the moment, because there isn't anything in our country for the elderly. They find it difficult to obtain information from the environment. They experience the world in an unfiltered, inaccurate, and unpredictable manner, face combined and complex effects concerning communication, mobility, and performance in everyday tasks, and there are many, demonstrate peculiar, non-purposeful, or even challenging behaviors. The level of communication, in the area of communication, the trainer should know the level of the trainee's development in order to plan an appropriate intervention. As we all know, this is not easy at all, and because here we've heard very useful information, and we are the ones who have to make that in practice. From our side, I want to repeat again that this is many times it's very difficult, but we try and we think we manage it. Sorry, Vasilis, you are in my screen, but now you're not, okay. So in our case, the majority of our population is at the first and second level of communicative competence, pre-intentional and intentional behavior. In other words, if a trainee cannot communicate effectively his or her need to seek attention or to inform another person of something or to make a request, then the training should be designed in order to promote effective and functional communication. A lot of speakers before mentioned the importance of communication, and yes, this is it. Sorry. Are you listening to us?
Yes.
Yes,
yes, you are.
Now. Yes, we are listening.
But there is a problem. No, it doesn't work.
You mean the presentation start?
The PowerPoint, yes. Not me, the presentation.
Not you, the presentation.
Okay. Here we are again, and I hope that
Great.
we will stay here. So, to meet their needs and help them perceive their self and their surroundings, we try to build an environment which is safe, predictable, and responsive. In what way? Understanding the person's strengths and weaknesses. Assess. You've talked a lot about assessment. It's so important. We use several tests or several scales. We very much use, you mentioned in Emine and someone else, the discussion and the cooperation with the parents, with the families. So we assess and identify the trainees' strengths and weaknesses, plan a meaningful intervention, implement and test, and of course reflect and correct. Using structure of the physical environment, taking under consideration the special needs of MDVI people, you know that, lighting and shade, color and contrast, structure of the daily routine, everyday life tasks, training activities, structure of rather build a relationship of trust where communication can be established and maintained. Andrea, you mentioned before, why does the trainees, why do they learn? So through communication, this is our main difficult task, to find out why they want or they would like to learn. Color and contrast in our environment. This, as you can observe, is a dining room with blue and yellow colors and contrast in every aspect that we may achieve that. Our playground, which is full of colors, it is accessible for low vision children because of the color contrasts, and for totally blind children because the surface has tactile indications, so a blind person can move around very easily. The signage, this is a big cooking spoon that indicates that the dining room is there. Time-out spaces where our children and adults can have their rest time. The surfaces are different, the colors are in contrast, the space is different every time, so they know where they are and what they do where they are, because there are places where they do not have training or education. There are places just to relax or to have their own time, their own free time. In our workshops, we have some workshops, 3 of them. We try to structure the tasks so to be a step-by-step procedure. In these 3 photographs, we see the preparation, the doing, and then the making up of the dishes. Here are some of our trainees in a visit in the supermarket. We do it every week. They buy what they need, and then during the week they produce, they cook, and they produce products that they or we eat. It is by chance, but in the middle photograph, the t-shirt of this trainee saying never give up, it's something that we try to think of it every day. It's not on purpose, but when we made the presentation, we found out the message. Again, with gardening, where our trainees by themselves or with support of the trainers, they're doing things that begin somehow, continue somehow, and they end up as they should end up. Recycling, it's one of our main workshops. One by one, the photographs show how the trainees take the newspapers, it's paper recycling, take the newspapers, they tie up, they melt it, they push it, they mash it, and then at the end, we end up with, before Christmas, we end up with little decorations, as you can see. And the kindlings, which is a very new workshop, we're very proud of it. We took these last 2 ideas from Blinden Institute in Bavaria, Germany. So our trainees take little pieces of wood, and we have modified the way they managed to make it. And at the end, we have the result of these kindlings ready for the fireplaces. We sell these products for Amemoni's programs to get money for our programs. Structured daily tasks and training activities, of course, is a tool for organizing first the trainees' behavior, as it provides predictable routines with a clear and specified beginning, middle, and end, which, of course, we know and you know that is the most important achievement. Provides opportunities for repetitive input and for the person to anticipate or even request the next action. includes clear, small, specific tasks customized to the person's sensory issues, embraces use of senses, the other senses, and of functional vision with regards to any other sensory issues, and allows individualized intervention in a work group. And as for the trainer's intervention, it provides opportunities to identify motivating situations in a control setting that create a need for the person to interact or communicate. Our trainers need a lot of motivation, of course, because their job is really difficult. Provides opportunities to develop turn-taking tasks, allows opportunities to select and measure alternative communication input, touch cues, object cues, and adapted signs, allows to interpret the cues, identify communicated behaviors, and respond to them in ways the student can perceive. PrECIVIM, the project, the participation, the blended training, the mentoring, the support. We're really lucky that we participated in this project. Acknowledged and met the need of the teachers to have customized and individualized training, provided the theoretical framework, helped systematize our work, encouraged and provided the space and time to reflect upon and refresh our views, our planning, our interventions. Now Lenya will continue presenting to you Manoli's case, a success story in progress.
Well, good afternoon from me also. We would like to present Manoli's story. It's a short story, and we believe that it shows how the structured program in his everyday tasks really supported him and his family in order to facilitate communication and improve his behavior. Manolis joined the day center at the age of 6. He is an MDVI young boy. He has OPPG syndrome, mental impairment, and autism, just to give you an idea. But above all, he had several problems in most fields of development, such as emotional and behavioral problems. He exhibited challenging behaviors at all times. He was unable to attend a specific educational setting before coming to Amimoni, and I have to say that because he was self-injurious, and he became also aggressive, mostly at home, not at the setting of Amimoni. He experienced intense separation anxiety from the family, but he also had other issues in his cognitive level. He had limited understanding related to serving his basic needs. His level of communication was at the level of intentional behavior, meaning that he could understand he had his behavior had an effect to the environment. However, he was unable to use that in order to become more functional and to have his environment responding to him. And in terms of his sensory level, he had tactile issues, tactile defensiveness, sorry about that, vestibular defensiveness, and problems with his taste also. He was unable, you can see the first picture is taken at the playground, where he was limited, restricted to his stroll because he could not leave this place, this position, and he only could touch the toy, his favorite toy, which was brought here at school with him. Very gradually, using an individualized program, focusing on daily activities and on the everyday routine, we analyzed each task. We provided adequate transition time, we feel, maybe 7 or 8 minutes, as you said before moving from the stroll to the hug of a person. And many months later, he was able to sit in the hug of his trainer near the floor, touch the floor, explore the floor, until he was able to be left on the floor of the school and actually play with other toys. And then he was also able to start anticipating for things, to interact with people. He was able to interact with another peer in the classroom and to respond to commands. And he was able to start touching other items also. And they were put in use in an alternative communication system. And you can see the final photo. He was even able to go to the playground in a completely different look. He is not very comfortable here of this picture, but he has been enjoying the playground ever since. And the most important is that he has started using, besides the communication system, his ability to imitate sounds. And we believe he's going to move on to a more verbal communication. So that's it from Manolis. And I would like to take the opportunity and thank BBU, thank University of Thessaly, thank everyone for being so supportive during this process. Thank you.
So thank you all. And this is it. Thank you.
Okay, it was great. Your presentation was great. I don't know if there are any questions from the people who are watching us, about 200 people that are watching us. Well, I think the thing that you raised about the multisensory environment with all these stimuli, around, again, gives opportunity to our students with MDVI to grasp their attention. Again, I mean, everything is linked today, because if you have so many stimuli, then the kids may have more attention to some of these, and based on this attention, you see, John, he listened attention, theory of mind, again, he's with us. Yeah, so thank you so much, Amimoni.
Thank you.
The great team of Amimoni. I mean, Amimoni, brave parents, you are doing excellent work, and we know not only from Amimoni, all associations which are created by parents, when they are united, they can do miracles. So thank you so much about this, not only for this presentation, because of your role, your significant role here in our country. Now, we have a surprise for you. We have a special guest today, the team from the Special Primary School for Deafblind students, Dr. Maria Zeza, as well as Fotini Bouloukou and Maria Filianou. The team has worked aspects of communication based on music. And the title of their presentation is Music as a Means of Communication. So I invite Maria Zeza and the rest of the team, I invite them to join our meeting here and proceed to the presentation.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and for the participation to that special conference, but mainly for the participation to that Erasmus program. Let me share my screen. I think you can see our presentation.
Yes.
And you can hear us.
And you can, and yes.
Okay.
Can hear you. Yeah.
Well. We had the chance to be part of that Erasmus program. PRECIVIM was a great opportunity for our school, our educators and our students. Through this program, which we have to say has been supported from the University of Thessaly, we have the chance to elaborate an exceptional and thoughtful material, training material, conducted by the University of Baisbolia in Romania, and participate in a training program supported by the University of Northampton in UK. We are going to present you an educational intervention, which has been mainly conducted from two inspired musicians, Miss Maria Filianou and Miss Bouloukou Fotini, working in special school for deafblind students, and me. Unfortunately, both of our musicians, due to unforeseen reasons, didn't manage to participate in the conference and be with us. But I'll try to carry on the presentation on behalf of them. Okay. Through our interaction with deafblind students, with MDVI and deafblind students, it was revealed the need to develop innovate interventional teaching methods to enhance skills and facilitate the communication between MDVI and deafblind students. Excuse me, but I have a problem. I have the same problem to carry on with the next slide. Okay, problem solved. Okay.
You can, Maria, sorry for the interruption. You can get rid of the small.
Okay.
Minimize. Minimize.
Okay.
Window there. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we propose that a music teaching program based on rhythmic vibration could be developed in order the communication to be facilitated. In particular, meeting the basic needs for communication could be achieved through simple rhythmical musical shapes that can be performed on any instrument capable of producing intense vibration, or even with clapping or banging a type of furniture. Children are attracted to music naturally, even without necessarily processing typical social skills. One of the primary advantages of music is its ability to offer a different, non-verbal way to communicate. Music, therefore, constitutes a communicational method characterized by plasticity, which helps students to establish it as a medium that can adapt to the needs of different personalities and act as both a motivation power and entertainment. It's the primary quality of music to promote introspection as well as interpersonal relationships. The communicative role of music is very important since it has a unique quality to involve students in experiential activities that emerge sensory experience and reinforce communication skills. So we have music as a great motivator that can motivate both purposeful movement by providing opportunities for gathering sensory information, communicate, and make choice. The effectiveness of music activities is focused on the structure that music provides. The correlation of music and movement could motivate and help a child to control his or her body and transform the musical vibrations, rhythms, and dynamics to an important and valuable means of communication. Musical activities incorporate the dynamic element of structured repetition, which is a very important factor in communications, since individuals are exposed in the same time both to an already known stimuli, so they develop their anticipation, and to a new stimuli, a situation that emerges expression and captures their attention. Moreover, students are exposed to positive experiences with their peers, resulting to the development of positive self-image and socio-emotional skills. In that case, musical activities are introduced in order to widen students' experiences, activate their expression, and enforce their potential in communication, perception, and action. As communicative expression should be recorded, any attempt in body movement, in mimicry, in vocalization, in sound, or even any change in rhythm or breathing can be assessed. Therefore, the music becomes a flexible communicative tool that is adapted to the student to the student, places also the student in the center and adapts all the activities to his potential and communicative needs. MDVI and deaf-blind students may, through structured music activities, develop their communicative skills. Sound and vibration could help students through coactively touching and signing to emerge the communication skills. In the case of MDVI deaf-blind students, music is perceived through their bodies by touching or even leaning on the musical instruments. Piano, guitar, and drums. We choose instruments that can produce vibration and stimulate students' communication answers and language. In that case, student sound isn't perceived only auditory. The sound can be felt through the skin and the bones in all parts of the body as means of vibration, which are perceived and transported rhythms, sounds, and melodic sequences. By touching the sound source, or for example by sitting on the loudspeaker, or by feeling the vibration on the floor, or by touching the musical instrument, or by touching another person larynx, the voice apparatus, the child will have a contact vibration of sound, speech, song, and music. Even though the sound perception through the body could be compared with the hearing of sound, still it enables the MDVI and deaf-blind students to communicate and contact with their surroundings sound environment. The rhythms and tones are experienced as vibration, and all these rhythmical musical influences are transformed into their own form of expression. That means movement, mimicry, speech, signing, demonstration of personal desires and preferences, refusal, attention to an object, turn-taking, understanding, cause and effect, understanding the action of others, anticipation of the next activity, sustaining joint attention, understanding the action of others, or imitation. So we propose that music is correlated with communication and can be used in a myriad of ways in the educational process in order to promote it and be used as a means for communication. Some of those are, it can be used through rhythm, performing and imitating both simple and complex rhythmical schemas. It can be used through improvisation, creating simple improvised pieces reflective their temperament and emotional state, and either through song, singing various songs in groups. Many different instruments with strong vibration could be used as the main instrument for creating an improvisation scene. Naturally, their use doesn't require any musical skills. Now, the structure of a music lesson can be the following. The musicians start with a starting song, which introduces children to the music lesson. Then we have drilling activities using rhythm, music, and movement. Musical rhythm activities using the body. Music improvisation, and a song for greeting that is the end of the lesson. Let's share a case study from our student. We have an MDVI student with limited expressive communication. He uses objects of reference, and to develop his receptive communication, we use tactile cues and tactile sign language. And he adores music. We based on this, and we made through our interdisciplinary team their individual educational program. Our main objectives are to develop his expressive communication, to encourage him to participate in a musical dialogue, in the form of non-verbal communication. So we are planning an educational intervention program which focus in the development of a musical dialogue based on vibration for musical instruments. As strategies are chosen the structured teaching course and routines, the use of rhythmic shapes and form in music, the guided experimentation, the musical dialogue, and the object of reference and tactile cues. Let's see a few of our activities. The educational intervention had a specific structure with activities in a specific order. That way the student could anticipate and predict the forthcoming activities in a secure environment. The student contacted with the guitar, and when the guitar was presented, it signaled the opening song and the start of the lesson. Excuse me. The first dialogue between the musician and the student was through a body song. Initially, the musician showed different body parts, the head, the arms, the legs, on the student's body, following the form and the rhythm of the song. Gradually, the student was motivated to show the corresponding body parts on himself or on the musician with tactile guidance when it was needing, following the music and the musical scheme. There was sound support with a grand drum frame. Directed improvisation activities on the drum followed. Questions and answers, simultaneous rhythmic sequences and shapes, and solo parts. Especially in these conversations, if we can call them like that, the students showed a willingness to control the course and the dialogue. Take the initiative, he wants to control the dialogue. Other times he was more energetic and other times he was more passive. Finally, it was introduced into the big drums, from the loud sound of the drum with buckets and gradually to gentle and light conversation with the fingers. When the student reached the complete relaxation of this musical communication, that was the end of the lessons. Again, another song with the guitar, that was the meaning of the end of the lesson, and the musician was giving the object of reference to give the student the confirmation that the lesson has ended and the student should be transited to the next course. So through music, new communicative non-verbal paths were emerged and innovation communication potential were developed, referred to emotions and mobility. The student was motivated to interact and communicate through music patterns. We have a communicative dialogue through music. The lesson was starting with singing on the guitar, and the student was in full contact with the musical instrument, or sometimes embracing the guitar so he can feel all the vibrations. It was used by the musician tactile sign languages during the greetings, and the student was encouraged to perform with drum and guitar in a common pulse in the second song. Under that prism of communication, music offered the students a significant emotional experience and realization, resulting to a self-reinforcing means of communication. Through it, the students experienced constant success, which is very important for the students. Musical activities consist of important motivators for expressive communication for MDVI and deafblind students that promote motor, sensory, and cognitive skills. Thank you very much for your attention.
Maria, thank you very much for your contribution in this meeting, because again you open another window about music. I was impressed because you all the time you were correlating. You try to combine, to correlate music and communication, and actually you use music as a means, and that it brought in my mind again what John said about mirror systems when he was analyzing the thing about mirror systems. He mentioned that there is no sight there. The only thing that we need there is the auditory system. So actually you placed your whole project on this point, and from that point you build up communication. This is amazing, and this is something that I think we often meet in our job, in our work, that music creates miracles regarding communication. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I have to thank you very much for your patience. You are with us, and your presence give us this energy to carry on till midnight. You know that, till midnight. Andrea, we will stay here. Now it's our turn. We are approaching to the end of this event with the coordinating team of this project. Associate Professor Magda Nikolaraisi, Dr. Maria Papazafiri, Dr. Chariklia Kanari, and me myself are going to invite you to a small journey through the paths of communication. So I will start now. Yes, where is our presentation? Here we are. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the title of our presentation is about unveiling the mystery of communication. Now, why mystery? All of us, we work in special education, and we know that communication is not something that you can take it for granted. I mean, we cannot take it for granted in our everyday life. So imagine working in this population with so many barriers. Many times we struggle to build up a communication with our student. Nothing is static in the process of a communication. Everything changes, we know that. And sometimes these changes may bring us fear, they bring us disappointment, or even frustration. Well, we can say for sure, at least from my side, that communication is at least challenging. It's a challenging thing in our work. Now, if we want to analyze the word mystery, we have to find another term which is linked to mystery. Why is mystery? Because of the complexity. And why I'm saying complexity? What is complicated? Well, all of us, they mention all these complex needs, from the first presented today from John till to the end with Maria Zeza. We have so many terms here. We have MDVI, multiple disabilities and visual impairment. We have PMLD, profound and multiple learning disabilities. We have CLDD, complex learning difficulties and disabilities. We have SLD, severe learning difficulties, deaf blindness, and multisensory impairment. So yes, I'm so persuaded that communication could be very, very complex. So let's start to unveil this thing about communication step by step. Shall we go linear? I like lines. They are very simple. Of course, it's infinity, you know, it doesn't stop anywhere, a line, but it gives an idea. There is a center, say the teacher, there is a channel, say his hands, the toys, and there is the receiver. The receiver is the student. It's the other, the significant other. So shall we go linear? It gives a rough idea, sorry, about what a communication may be. But there is another way also. Shall we go helical? What is this, the helical thing? Well, Frank Duns proposed a model in 1967. He proposed a model about communication, and he saw this helical form, helical shape in the communication process. You know that the name helical comes from helix, which means an object has a three-dimensional shape like a wire wound. Anyway, but that was more dynamic compared to the linear model that I showed you before. Or shall we call Aristotle in our company today, this day and this time? Because Aristotle, and I suppose he was the first person who decided to analyze what is communication. And in this analysis that he did, he saw the two opposites, if I say opposite, the speaker and the audience, and he could realize that when you say something, there is an effect to the other person. Okay, all these slides are about efforts to analyze the term communication through models, through communication models. Shall we analyze dyadic communication? So, okay, I can analyze that. I can see that. I can see a person. It's not only me. It's not only you, the other person. There are thousands of things that take place between you and me. I talk, you listen. My mouth is open, your mouth is closed. My thoughts are green and blue, and you interpret them as yellow and orange. What do you think? Are we communicating right now? Shall we go dynamics? Now we have a new update models of communication. I think we are most familiar with these models because these models, they include more things apart from the center and the receiver. They include contexts like physical context and like psychological context. Also, they characterize all these things that happen and take place between the center and the receiver. And what are these things? Noises, barriers. And we have to define these barriers and this noise, what sort of this noise is when I talk about that. So here we have the two models that the center conveys the message, expressive communication, and the receiver gets the message, decoding it, receptive communication. And in turn, the receiver becomes the center, and the center becomes the receiver, and communication goes on. This is, I can say, this is a kind of circle of communication, and of course it's a dynamic situation, but takes place again under a unique, a physical, and a psychological context. So if I see again all these complex needs that I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation about MDVI, MSI, and the rest, yes, okay, I can tell now why it is complex and why many times, like John said, he was waiting 6-7 minutes for a response, and I suppose he was thinking, what is happening in his mind now? I mean, I sent a message, and now I'm waiting for a response. I'm waiting, the minutes are passing, I'm anxious, I'm getting nervous, I don't have patience, but what happens in his mind? So in the beginning, somebody may say, well, easy peasy to communicate, but now, after all this, and the attempts of many models to interpret and analyze communication, I can say it's not easy peasy, it's difficult, lemon difficult. From now on, my colleague Maria Papazafiri will carry on.
Characteristics and factors that determine limited communication opportunities for children with MDVI are the severe sensory loss that may be present and prevents awareness of the partner and the communication situation. Motor difficulties have implication on spontaneous communication, on natural modes of expression, even if there is no difficulty at the reception level. Delays in cognitive development that interfere with learning, memory, and understanding needed for conventional communication. And previous unsuccessful experiences of communication can lead to low motivation to engage communication situations, and participation of the child is more passive. For children with MDVI, the path to effective communication can be very long and difficult to negotiate. Here, we can also consider as a barrier the environment, which doesn't facilitate the learning process. What should we do before starting the intervention? Which approach we will use, for instance, the linear, the helical, or the dynamic? Could we go without any planning, just take action? A key stage is the assessment. The more systematic and organized it is, the more purposefully the intervention is designed. Assessment helps to answer our concerns regarding the prioritization of the intervention programs and regarding the appropriate choice of strategies, methods, and tools in terms of communication skills and behavior. The assessment aims at assessing the potential of children with the ultimate goal of continuous feedback and reassessing for a further planning of activities that they have a functional continuity with the previous activities.
And now our colleague, Dr. Chariklia Kanari, will carry on the presentation.
Hello, everyone. So, first of all, and even before the assessment, it is very important to be aware of the stages of communication, based on the axiom that it is impossible not to communicate, and that every child presents a communication, send messages. It is important to know these stages and levels of communication. The model of development of communication proposes 7 levels of communication. In short, and starting from the bottom of this pyramid, we can say that there is the pre-intentional behavior, which is reactive or reflexive behavior, not intentional, not controlled, but express and presents things as, for example, a child who is hungry, thirsty, demands something, protesting something. The next one is the level of intentional behavior, not intentionally communicative. Is the stage that the child is aware that some specific types of communicative forms are responses from the environment, but he or she does not communicate intentionally. For example, hitting objects can mean that he likes or she likes these objects, or he wants these objects. The level of non-conventional pre-symbolic communication is when the child is aware that the behavior has an effect on another person, so starts to use a non-conventional form of communication, as for example, movement, dance, etc. The conventional pre-symbolic communication is the level when the child operates with the environment. For example, a child that shows an object, offering an object, shows something with his or her finger. The level of concrete symbolic communication is when the child links specific concrete symbolic representations with the environmental references. The level of abstract symbolic communication, when the child uses some abstract symbol to communicate, spoken oral words, signs, and the more the child uses this abstract symbol in different contexts in order to communicate intentionally, the more functional are these behaviors. And finally, the formal symbolic communication, when the child uses rules with regards to a formal language. So that's why it is very important to know these levels in order for the assessment. We have to know in which state of communication level is the child and what kind of behaviors he uses to send messages. So how we obtain information for the communication profile of the child and how we make decisions. Evaluation. I think another very important characteristic of this project was the multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary work. We have already saw that in previous presentations. It is very important because teachers and professionals from different with different specific scientific backgrounds share their knowledge and contribute to shape the profile, the child profiles. Another issue is that this teamwork in multidisciplinary teams is very important because sometimes all these communicative behaviors maybe not be recognized as communication. The development of evaluation protocol with regards to the environment is also very important, and the evaluation has to be related with the context. We have to be able to identify how environmental factors affect skills, abilities of a child when they are performed, when they are expressed, or when and how they are hindered. Emine has already talked and presented the important role of collaboration with parents. Of course, speaking of communication, we have to communicate effectively with the parents. It is their child. They know their child. They can help us and we can help them if we collaborate. They can give us valuable information about their daily life, how they meet the needs of their child, what they need from us. So we have to make parents our partners. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So given the heterogeneity of children with MDVI, it is obvious that we have to use a range of type of measures, formal and informal. In every case, we have to consider a lot of things. For example, we have to consider issues of flexibility, issues of adaptations, or also issues regarding how we interpret the results in order to have a clear profile of a child, not to underestimate its potential. Observation is a valuable resource. Different type of assessment, developmental assessment, educational assessment, and functional assessment. This is very important because functional assessment, in the light of an ecological approach, focuses not only on the skills and the abilities that are necessary in order to have access and participate in different environments, but also to the environmental requirements. So the assessments need to be individualized. We have to focus on individual needs and the environment and the quality of a person's interactions with the environment. We have to build a relationship of trust with the child to make it feel comfortable, to provide time. The assessment has to lead on a focused on needs intervention in order to identify priorities, to set goals, realistic objective planning, and progress evaluation. We have to be able to monitor our work, to changing things, to adapt things, to make it more effective. So I think you have to...
So in a nutshell, a high quality assessment of the child with MDVI requires more time for more efficient planning. It is important for us to observe and gather information about their abilities, interests, preferences, the environments in which they are involved, such as classrooms or home and other environments. The collection of this information requires cooperation with various specialties of professionals as well as with their children families. The time it takes to complete the assessment depends on a number of factors, such as the complexity of the topics identified, the timing of the assessment, the child's schedule, the availability of the professionals, and the activities and methods. The assessment, as Hara said, should be individualized so that it can be accurate. In addition, it should be done in various environments in which the child interacts and on a regular basis. The materials that will be used should be tailored to the individual needs of the child. The family has its own expectations regarding the assessment process and provides important information. This information will lead to a more valid assessment and to the design and implementation of programs that will meet the needs of the children.
So, who we are, the story of PrECIVIM project. We are many, we are a network. In this project participated, the participants were universities, special schools, non-governmental organizations, and an IT company. Universities, University of Thessaly, the coordinator of the project, Babes Bolyai University of Romania, and Roehampton University from UK. We had the great opportunity to work with schools, Special School for the Blind from Greece, Special High School for the Visually Impaired in Romania, Whitefield Academic Trust of UK, and St. Barnabas Schools for the Blind in Cyprus, and to share experiences from teachers from different educational settings. Also, a very important partner, AMIMONI, Pan-Hellenic Association of Parents and Friends of Visually Impaired People with Additional Handicaps of Greece, that presenters, they have presented their work, and European Blind Union, an associated partner for the dissemination of the project results. And the IT company DataBank Greece was a very important partner in relation to the platform and the distance learning events. The main aim of the PrECIVIM project was the link, the act of assessment with the act of the intervention, and in specific, focusing on teachers and professionals' training needs regarding the assessment and instruction of communication skills. The objectives were to enhance skills and knowledge regarding the development of communication skills, to promote collaborations between different organizations within this network, and finally point out best practices and guidelines for the education of children with MDVI in communication, and not only.
So the intellectual outputs of PrECIVIM project are the following. The first one refers to scoping and situation analysis. The second refers to the PrECIVIM learning and communication platform. The intellectual output 3 refers to training material. The fourth to mutual learning experience, face-to-face learning events and distance learning events. The fifth intellectual output refers to the guide of best practices. The sixth to dissemination and exploitation activities. And the last refers to the policy recommendations and guidelines report. So the training was trying to meet the needs of 147, I think, professionals that participated in the training events at the specific time. For this reason, it was a dynamic process that evolved according to the needs and concerns of professionals. The topic were issues regarding tactile material, tactile defensiveness, communication skills and needs regarding students with MDVI, alternative communication systems, assessment needs, assistive technology, and of course, early intervention programs.
So, as Maria said, the training program was split in two ways, two roadmaps. The first one was the face-to-face training events. 147 professionals participated in the training events, and there was a mixed program because many trainers were traveled and visited the other countries and were present during the classes and during the schools they were in operation. In the other roadmap, it was the distance, it was synchronous online training events. 119 professionals participated in this second section of the training, and we had a very big number, 259 reflective logs, something that Andrea and the Romanian team mentioned, the significance of this reflective element that came up through these reflective logs. The reflective logs talk. They talk because through these reflective logs, through the actual research that we applied as a methodology, we saw that all teachers or professionals, they mentioned that most of the MDVI students that they had, they were at the pre-intentional communication level. They struggled for an acceptable communication code. As we see, they mentioned these reflective logs while they were reflective on their own thoughts and thinking and actions, that the assessment should be more strict and more thorough. You can see they obtain information about the child's needs. They learn the children more and more every day about their preferences, about their needs, and they were able to see in the end something very, very important: patterns. Because pattern means something. There is a strategy there. And communicative behaviors, they mentioned many times that there were some unusual things that the children did, and that was something very difficult to jot it down in their own notes and make their own interpretations. That was something that many professionals, they found it very difficult. But in the end, and that was something like a treasure, they suggest 119 professionals. In the end, we found common things like detailed description of the student's profile. That was very, very important. They said that we need to have a detailed profile of our child before our intervention. The use of regular use of many symbols, non-conventional, task analysis, clear stated starting and finishing state. That was something that we discussed many times. We need a clear state to start and a clear point to finish, so they can assess more efficiently what happened during the intervention. They mentioned modeling before asking in order to increase self-regulated learning. They mentioned the 119 professionals. They mentioned that you have to keep the learning environment, not change it all the time, just enrich it with stimuli, but make it, something standard. Repetition of the activity, exactly, because it takes time to see a response from your students. And of course, the use of reward systems. This is something that the 119 professionals, they suggest after all these interventions that they make during the project. So in the end, and what is the ultimate aim of communication? We have to remember that communication, the root of communication is from communicatio, which means share. So if the goal is to share, so it doesn't matter in the end which model you're gonna use. Is it the helical? Is it the linear? Is it the dynamic? The point is that in order to share, you need both a teacher and a student to be there. So now, the last decades, I think we are in a new era. Now we talk about augmentative and alternative communication. These new notions and new implementations, they describe multiple ways to communicate, supplementing or compensating either temporarily or permanently with our kids, with the kids with complex needs, with kids that they have severe expressive communication disorders. So I feel that this journey through the paths of communication removed all mystery regarding the comprehension of how we communicate, or how and in which way we can enhance communication. Well, if I say that there is a magic, I can say that the magic remains in the communication in itself. Time will tell. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your patience during all this presentation. Where are we? Yeah, we are here. Thank you very much, Maria and Hara. With this presentation, we arrived at the end of this conference. I want to thank you very much for being with us. Many thanks go to our invited speakers, and also many thanks go to our IT man, Mr. Kyriazis Vaitsis. He supported technically this event, and of course he was always a backup for us. We can see Kyriazis. Finally, all the members of the organizing and coordinating committee, Magda Nicolaresi, Chariklia Kanari, Maria Bazafiri, Kyriazis Vaitsis, and myself, we want to wish you with all our heart and all our will. Many thanks for attending this online conference, and with our best wishes to stay safe, stay healthy, and above all, we need that, stay positive. So this is the end for today, Andrea. Thank you, last but not least, thank you all the attendees. There are still 173, I can see that, apart from us. Thank you for holding up and keeping up this event. I don't know if there is something that anybody wants to ask. I hope there is no question, because we are tired and we want to go home. Aeneas Martos. We have a question.